All right, testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. All right, testing, testing. Great. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Mix Gray, and I'm back again for another Suzerain stream. Super happy to be back. I brought water this time because that was a stupid idea of me last time not to bring water for a game where 90% of it is reading text. Not my best move. But today we're back, and I'm very happy to be back. I'm exhausted as shit, but this game always cheers me up. And I think we all need a bit of cheering up in these dark times, so let's continue. If I were smarter, I would have set this up before I started. So, last week, actually, I can say last week this time. Last week, we did our diplomatic meeting, and we've begun trade missions to Agnolia and to Velhen. What else have we done? Let's quickly go over that, actually. That would help. Right. Orso Hawker came to us and attempted to make us shut down the Constitutional Reform Committee and basically make us declare a state of emergency, allow crackdowns on everything. I think I basically let him talk and tell me his entire plan before promptly refusing it. The construction of the railway has begun with Taurus Holding. I'm very happy about that. We released a statement condemning Runeberg. Overall, I think it's too early to say, but I think we're in a great position. I hope this will be a very, very successful run. So, without further ado, let us continue. Trials of Democracy. What an apt name. Alright, let's get started. Boren, what have we got? Communist books burned in Boren. Young Swords and NFP flags burned. Legislative debate on the repeal of the EPA. I want to see this. Grand National Assembly was the stage of contentious debate today over the proposed repeal of the Energy Protection Act. Arguments for and against the repeal were put forth by Franz Richter, USP Alban Clavin, the United Sordland Party and National Front Party respectively defended the act vehemently, citing the need for Sordland to protect strategic industries. Yeah, I think there's a lot to say about keeping the EPA. If maybe changing it, keeping it available, because we do need to protect our energy industry at our current state. We can't have Bloomberg buying up our entire energy sector and basically screwing us out of our own energy to fuel their own war machine, which they'll use to then attack us. It's a very contentious topic, I think, we'll have to deal with along the line. Recession hits farmers, that's bad. Narbel reports lack of hospitals. Long lists for terminally ill patients, that's bad. Bush resistance in sanctuaries, that's concerning as well. What have we got for news? Red Youth Rises, warning bells for Sordland. Interesting, they're not mentioning the Young Swords because this is a right-wing outlet. School poisoning rebel, that's not good. Oh, right, the budget's going to come up. Worker unions put pressure for promised benefits. Good, good. That's very good. We can use that and we can back the unions with that. Barbecue with Frank. It was a Saturday afternoon, my first break from work in what felt like years, and the weather couldn't have been more perfect. Trying to keep my mind off the upheaval sparked by the circus's assassination, I lit the backyard grill. Monica and Diana were out shopping for craft supplies, and I've given my staff the day off. It was just myself and Frank at home. I wasn't sure how he felt about me at the moment, but I did know how he felt about barbecued ribs. Our cooks had left some marinating in the refrigerator. Sure enough, as soon as Frank glimpsed the grill and the meat, he stepped outside to join me. Come to spend some quality time with your old man, have you? Sure, if you can spare a few minutes out of your busy schedule. I'm sorry, I know I haven't been around very lately, but I'm happy to see you now. It's okay, I know you've got the most stressful job in the country, and you've got to feed your family on top of it all. We both chuckled. I turned to tend to the fire. Here, let me try. He grabbed the fan and started quickly waving it over the coals. The fire roared to life. He turned to me with a grin on his face, as if he was expecting praise. Not bad, son. Not bad. Thank you, sir. It is in our utmost interest to fulfill our duties with precision. The grilling shall commence in exactly 1 minute and 32 seconds. There was a spot-on impersonation of Lucian. We both looked at each other for a second and burst out laughing. I realized my throat was parched. There was a 6-pack of beer in the kitchen. Why don't you bring us a couple of beers? He looked at me in disbelief. You mean I can... But Mom told me... He stopped himself, quickly ran inside, returned with 2 beers. We cracked them open, clinked the bottles, and gazed out the city skyline. For a moment, my thoughts flashed back to my childhood and my relationship with my own father. My father was a rich man. We never had to worry about food, clothes, or anything else, yet he was nearly always away, and constantly distracted on the rare occasions he was at home. Now that I was the president, I was worried that I would end up like my father, distant and absent for Frank's life. Dad, can I ask you something? We're family. You can ask anything. It's just, I feel there's so much you've been hiding from me about your past and about what's going on right now. Like at dinner the night after the ball, you told me everything was under control, but it wasn't, was it? I know what happened in the 20s. We learned all about it in school. Now with the protests and the riots, is it going to be the same thing? Is there going to be a civil war in Sordland? I hope not. But what was it like back then? Uncle Peter said the 2 of you went through a lot. I'm not a kid anymore. You can tell me. Before I could gather my thoughts, the familiar images started flashing before my eyes. Images of soldiers advancing towards me and my friends, weapons drawn, of people I knew, friends and neighbors being dragged through the streets and murdered in the alleyways. And that little girl's face. Those were dark times. It seems like it. But you're nearly a grown man. Let's talk about it. Frank leaned forward in his chair, his eyes wide. I was barely older than you are now, studying economics at the Lac Haven Business School. I was a freshman, excited and young. I had just left the classroom to go back home as I heard the sound of multiple vehicles approaching the campus gates. As I got closer, I realized they were military camouflage trucks and tanks, carrying hundreds of soldiers. The same soldiers that were supposed to protect Sordland citizens pointed their guns at us. They immediately took control of the facilities. One of my friends asked what was going on and was arrested immediately. More people got angry, gathered in protest. I was there with the protesters as they declared martial law. We marched towards them. They threatened to use force, but we stood our ground, so they started beating anyone they saw, including me. The physical wounds took a few weeks to heal, but the mental scars have stayed with me to this day. I was lucky. I was still one of the lucky ones. Some of my friends were shot, many more arrested. I can't forget the screams to this day. It was right after I met your mother. We had both joined the student council to push for change after the coup of 27. Eventually, I became convinced that I wasn't doing enough, so I joined the Red Youth. Then, one night, it happened. 2 different factions in the army, one of them led by the fascist General Lederin, the other led by Socialist General Ricard, started fighting against each other. It was a bloodbath. Nowhere was safe. So we organized a protest one day in support of Ricard. In our minds, he was the better of the 2, and a true socialist. I paused for a moment before continuing. It was horrible. They were waiting for us. Soldiers started beating and shooting at everyone and plowing their tanks into the crowd. Amid the chaos, there was this girl. I never forgot her face. I tried to save her, but I couldn't reach her in time. Frank's face had grown pale. He turned his eyes away from me. That's enough for today. It's okay. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked you about it. I know I don't understand how easy my life is sometimes. One more thing, though. I know that you joined Red Youth back then. Do you mind if I ask why? I had to survive in that environment, and I made a choice. Frank raised his eyebrows, his curiosity still not satisfied, but sensing my reluctance to go on, he simply nodded. Sorry for bombarding you with questions. I know I complain sometimes, but my problems are nothing compared to what you went through. I'm here to listen to them, no matter what they are. Before Frank could say anything else, I heard the front door unlock. Diana and Monica's voices and the sounds of rustling shopping bags filled the house. Alright, I'll be upstairs until dinner. Frank went in and dashed upstairs. I took a long sip from my beer, looking at the city and the now setting sun. I hoped that talking to Frank about my past had been the right decision. Part of me felt as if some sort of burden had been lifted. But I had the same nightmares again that night. USP reports on reforms. performance clarified their demands. Good. Morgna industrial output concerns. The mayor of Morgna has reported that their industrial output numbers are this year 12% lower than last year. They're requesting additional support to improve their industrial capacity, including machinery and personnel, to combat the downwards trend. With the construction of several new factories in Morgna, the mayor stated his belief that an economic upturn in the city is still possible if government investments succeed. Interesting. Morgna is set to lose an additional 2% of industrial output next year. This might be worth an investment, considering our priority on electronics so far. We'll see. Regia advocates for energy partnership. I still don't know if I want to work with Regia. Their ties to Roomberg are far too close for me to be comfortable. And on top of that, I want to be able, I want the government of Sordland to be able to control as much of the energy share as possible, because frankly, I do not think our national resources should be controlled by anybody other than us. I think we should have majority control over that market, and I especially don't believe in private ownership of natural resources, simply because the profit motive and the need for energy are two things that cannot coexist. Energy must be used to serve the needs of the nation, the needs of the people. They cannot be a commodity to be traded and sold. So I'm hesitant about a region partnership. Prisoners riot in Antel Rock. That's where they're holding the prisoners from the British Freedom Front, I believe. Green Act, a misdirected effort. Yeah, these guys are like right-wingers. I don't really... Against the murder of Bernard Circus, the attacker used a military-grade machine gun. The attacker killed himself for shooting 25 people, killing 16. Jesus. Wow. Tourism bill signing deserves applause. Right, yeah, so this is Marcel Caranti's network kicking in for us. Good. Very good. Interest in Gassom, of course. Imperative Green Bill. Undemocratic elections. We'll talk about the election threshold very soon. I have a lot to say about that. CSP's report under scrutiny. It remains essential to distinguish between stated policy objectives and the actual situation on the ground. Concerning the complexity of labor dynamics, the debate underlines the need for transparency in evaluating such claims and reinforces the importance of independent verification. That's true, I don't actually know what's going on in United Contana. Ah, here we go. This is going to be an important conversation. Alright, presidential visit to Narbel. I was traveling to the snow-covered city of Narbel, in the Nargis region, for the Rural Development Forum organized by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. The mountainous city of Narbel had gritty tones to it. It was mostly regarded as one of the poorest cities in Sordland. Its people were hardy, wary. Even after the discovery of natural resources in the area, years of neglect by the central government were apparent on the buildings and the general infrastructure. Natural resources, namely gas and oil, were now under the control of Gassom, which elevated the corporation to a place of power. My task in this forum was mainly symbolic. Fake smiles and handshakes with oil barons, meeting with local politicians, but most importantly of all, making sure that Narbel did not feel like it was forgotten by the government. The scenery so far, however, was a reflection of Narbel's neglect. Main roads to the city were not maintained well. There were many bumps and empty, discolored spots on the asphalt. Navigating and swerving to avoid the inconveniences, our motorcade finally started nearing the city. As if my discomfort from the bumpy ride was apparent to him, Serge rolled down the partition window. "We will be arriving at Hotel West in a few minutes, sir." "Thank you for letting me know. At any time, it is my duty." After a moment, Serge started to smile under his mustache. "How is life, Serge?" "Sir, I just wanted to say it has been great these last 2 months. As you know, my wife Susan recently gave birth to our son, sir, and now my daughter just started at a very good high school in Holzard." "That's great news, Serge. I'm happy for you." "I appreciate it, sir. Truly, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to afford a good private school if she scored less in the entrance exams. But I shouldn't have made my insecurity get to me. Erica outsmarts me all the time. I'm very proud to have a daughter like her. I also hope that Diana will grow to be like her mother someday." "I'm sure she will, sir. After all, she is the daughter of a lion and a lioness. My daughter looks up to the First Lady for inspiration. It's not just limited to my daughter, sir. She's an inspiration for almost all women in the country. But, at the same time, it must be very hard for the First Lady as well. All this attention, adjusting to this new high-profile life, and a husband that has great responsibility." "You're right. It is hard for her." "It must be, sir. We sometimes forget the important people in life between all the responsibility and rush. You know, those we care for. I agree. Serge continued after a moment of silence. Have I told you, sir? We named my son George. The doctor said he is very healthy, and thankfully, so is my wife. That's good. I hope the hospital had a good service. Normally, we would have been treated at one of the suburban hospitals, but thanks to the special coverage of the presidential staff, we were transferred to Emerald State Hospital. We need to increase the quality of the services for all. That sounds like a tough issue to solve, Serge sighed. I've already started thinking about their university education, especially Erica. I want to send her to a good private school, but with the current state of the economy, it's going to be hard for us. You know what? I can support the education of your children. Mr. President, there's no way I can... With one look from me, Serge cut his sentence short and nodded at me after removing his hat. Mr. President, I don't know how I can ever repay you for this. Thank you so much. I hope you return the favor by helping someone in need, just like I did. I will, sir. Of course. I won't forget your generosity, sir. The car hit a major pothole and a bump, which lifted us up in our seats for a second. This is unacceptable. We need to invest in the infrastructure here. I agree, sir. We still need to drive back tomorrow unless you use one of those new helicopters. The motorcade began approaching from the hotel. The Hotel West was supposed to be the best hotel in Narbel. A large 25-story main building was undoubtedly one of the taller and more expensive buildings in the city. It towered over the nearby slums and had been a target for protests when it was first built. A crowd was gathered in front of the hotel and with the welcoming committee at its center. As we approached the red-carpeted entrance, I could see the mayor of Narbel and his top aides. Serge got out of the car and opened the door. He bowed his head respectfully and gestured towards the entrance. Thank you. Have a good day, Mr. President. As soon as I left the vehicle, the fresh air of Narbel filled my lungs. Almost immediately, everyone present in the crowd flocked over to me with an excessive display of courtesy, smiles, and handshakes while I donned the mask of a politician. A mask that I was very used to. I'm happy that we can support Serge. That's why I didn't spend all my money in the investments. I wanted to keep a little aside for him. Young Swords, because, well, I played this before, so I know that was coming, so I decided to do that. I really like Serge. He's one of my favorite characters. Young Swords suspected of terrorist attack. Also, the sky is blue. PFJP reports on reforms. He declared that without the implementation of term limits and limited degrees, it would be very difficult for him and his party to stand behind the reform package. Good to know. Term limits and limited degrees. I think I can do that. I think I can make that compromise. Briefing on the current welfare system. I arrived at the meeting room for my talk with Chiara and Pascal. Before beginning, I took a moment to appreciate the view from the balcony. The mountains of Narbel were completely covered with snow. While I was mesmerized by the scenery, Pascal Benoit walked up to me. My Minister of Health was, ironically, somewhat portly, having gained a few pounds since his breakthrough as best-selling writer, but his authority on social affairs could not be questioned. Such a spectacular view. Chiara Walda, the Minister of Education, joined us on the balcony, dressed in a sky-blue pantsuit. Her preference for trousers over dresses had made her the subject of much palace gossip, but it didn't seem to bother her in the slightest. Spectacular indeed. But if you look in the opposite direction, you will see what Seoul's decades of neglect did to the city. Most of the people living in Narbel are workers, farmers, and their wives and children. They're breaking their backs for close to no pay, all thanks to greedy corporations. My intention is to help the working class. I'm glad we see eye to eye on the issue. If you look past the view, you can see the real problems. Problems like poverty. Pascal nodded gravely. This was a subject he knew quite a bit about himself. His best-known books were about the plight of Sordland's less fortunate, drawing from his own past growing up in squalor. Well put, Miss Walda. I don't need to tell you about my own experience with poverty. I'm sure you have similar stories. Am I right, Mr. President? Thankfully, we never had any problems with money. You know the saying, you don't know what you have until it is taken from you. You don't have to have been born poor to sympathize with the plight of the impoverished, much as you don't have to have been born a woman to recognize Sordland's need for parity among the sexes. Parity among the sexes shouldn't be our first priority. Look at how many high-ranking female politicians our country has. Appearances can be deceiving, Pascal. Her voice sounded bitter. Think about how Lilias Graf got to her current position. I don't necessarily believe the rumors about her in Seoul, but she never could have risen so high if she didn't parrot his cause. Gloria Tori, is it an accident that the first female assembly speaker is such a staunch conservative? And then there was the Alfonso's habit of promoting women to prominent positions to give Sordland a progressive sheen while accomplishing nothing in reality. While women in places like Narbel are denied any opportunity to advance, the government can use a handful of female politicians from wealthy families, myself included, to pretend their only obstacles to success is their own lack of initiative. Meanwhile, those of us who don't use our clout to help powerful men stay in power are denigrated as angry spinsters. I ask you, Mr. President, does anyone care that your strategist, Mr. Galad, does not have a wife? I have nothing to add here. She is 100% correct. This is a very, very common tactic of hiring women from wealthy families who parrot conservative talking points to positions of power to basically denigrate working class women. This is very much the case, and she is completely correct in everything she said here. It's not a coincidence, and this happens all the time. The sheen of progressivism, the sheen of equality is far, far different from the reality of equality between men and women. I agree with you completely. Sordland's women deserve better. I'm glad to hear that. As I was saying, isn't it about time Holzard addressed the country's real issues, rather than bowing to the wishes of the hawks and fearmongers in the establishment, and diverting yet more resources to the military and law enforcement? Our welfare, healthcare, and education systems have been decaying since the recession. Sordland's poorer communities are losing hope. Hopelessness and a lack of opportunities can drive people to extreme solutions. We're seeing increased crime, domestic violence, and yes, rising inequality between men and women. Those issues must be tackled from different directions. We need to engage it holistically. Or wait, If only we could... I actually think this is... I agree with this, but I think this is more explicit. Stop the recession, create jobs, growth. Yeah. The economic situation does play a huge role in living standards. Our urban and rural disparities are stark, and the recession hit the weakest harder. We can't fix the economy by ourselves. We have to educate the people and let them create new opportunities too. There is another subject I want to mention. I've been working on improving the rights of workers in our country, and I've proposed a draft bill that's currently being reviewed by our party. Mr. Clavin has already backed me and given his support. Sordland has fallen behind most countries on this subject, and it's my responsibility to ensure this is not the case. There is always room for improvement, and it is good to hear that you are pushing for it. Appreciate the kind words, Mr. President. I will not let you down. It is also a matter of life and death. Every decade, we hear of some horrific accident due to employers' disregard for their workers' safety. So, will you back the bill when it arrives on your desk, Mr. President? I would be very interested in supporting it once it is finished. Yeah, I want to push for more workers' rights bills. This is 100% in line with what I want to do. So, yes. I'm relieved to hear that. He smiled. It's getting a little cold out here. Shall we continue our discussion indoors? We headed back inside. The meeting room was already prepared for state business. Small gifts for each of us had been placed on the table by the municipality. We took our seats. Let's start with your health overview, Pascal. As you wish, Mr. President. Sordland has a free healthcare system, except for a few private hospitals operating under it. Most of the populace receives adequate treatment. Health issues primarily appear in rural areas due to lack of quality services. I'm doing my best to ensure that citizens of all ages receive the best healthcare they can. I also personally want to solve our high infant and maternal mortality problem. How many hospital beds are there per 10,000 citizens? There are 10 beds per 10,000 citizens. Compared to most of our neighbors, this is a very good number. Our amount of beds are higher than the countries of Agnolia and Velhen, but we obviously can't match Lesbia or Valexland. So we're a middling power in this sense. Agnolia and Velhen should hardly be used as a standard, but it is good to know we aren't in a massive health crisis yet. How many doctors and nurses are employed? We have about 31,000 doctors and 73,000 nurses working for the Ministry of Health. This is a high number. What I think is, I don't want to be rude, but out of those numbers, how many are in urban and rural areas? Good point, Kara. Pascal? The data shows that per 10,000 people in urban areas, there are about 11 doctors, while in rural areas, there are only 3. In other words, rural citizens with medical emergencies have to wait an embarrassingly long time before they are treated. Yeah. Yeah, I think part of my priority will be raising the baseline for healthcare rather than simply prioritizing the areas that are already doing well. If we can set a standard by uplifting the rural areas as much as possible and setting a base, I think that'll do more for everybody in the long term. Because, I mean, if these numbers are looking good in the urban areas and we don't really have a health crisis there and people are actually being able to get treated, then absolutely we should start with the rural areas and raise that. What's the life expectancy and mortality rates? Our life expectancy is 65 years. Isn't that also the retirement age? I think that's also the retirement age. The infant mortality rate is a worrying 121 per 1,000 births. That's higher than 10%. That's really bad. While maternal mortality is at 5 per 1,000. I assure you, we're doing everything we can to save mothers and their newborns. Those numbers are saddening indeed. I agree. We must do everything we can. We are working very hard on improving the quality of our services. Thank you, Pascal. Your in-depth briefing is much appreciated. I want to hear about the education system. With pleasure. Source education is free, but we have a very outdated system that I want to reform. The other important issue is the lack of access to education in rural areas, especially for young girls. Your administration has the power to solve both problems. My highest priority is to get enough funding to be able to build schools in rural areas while I cleanse our educational system of its nationalistic indoctrination and sexist teachings. Tell me about the difference between urban and rural education. Urban areas have 3 times the number of schools per 10,000 people compared to rural areas. Rural areas also suffer from a lack of teachers. That's not a very good ratio. The situation is worse than expected. This is one of the most important problems we face, if not the most important. A huge part of the population is forgotten in terms of welfare. How many students and teachers do we have? Currently, there are about 5 million students, 3 million in primary education, 1 million in secondary, and 1 million in tertiary. There are approximately 155,000 teachers. Sordland is full of young and bright minds. We should keep striving to make education available for all. I think there needs to be a change in what is being taught. We should help children to ask questions and educate themselves. I agree. What is the literacy rate of Sordland? The literacy rate of Sordland is at 80%. That is a very good indicator for future growth, but it needs to increase. It's also far lower among girls and boys. If I remember correctly, the most illiterate areas in the region are Berja and Agland. That is correct. Although Lackhaven skews the statistics for the Nargis region, which also has a vast number of illiterate citizens. This underlines my point about the lack of access to education. Okay, so the main thing I want to prioritize is essentially access of healthcare and education to rural and poorer regions. That's good to know. That's a very good place. That's a very good soundbite to start with. It's not the full issue, but it's a solid place to start. Very happy about that. Thank you, Kiara. I can fill in the blanks from here. I believe that is everything. Kiara stood up and moved towards the window. She took a deep breath. What is it, Kiara? Look at this impoverished city. The streets are full of potholes, the hospital barely functioning, the school half open. This is not just about Saul, or even Alfonso failing. This decay in Sordland's forgotten regions has been going on for many decades due to structural corruption, which is fueled by capitalism. We are here to change that, provide for the people. That remains to be seen. I'm working on the new education system, and your support would be welcome. Kara sat back down inside. One way or another, we need change in Sordland. Greed and unchecked capitalism will not magically provide for the people. Tell me more about your plans, Kara. My plans require an increase in the government budget. I aim to solve the problems we highlighted with the allocated money. By building schools in the less fortunate and rural areas, and through fundamental changes to the education system, I will unlock the potential of all of our children, boys and girls alike. Improving the situation in rural areas is indeed a good idea. It's an investment in the future of Sordland. Imagine unlocking the full, untapped potential of our youth, the knowledge and wealth they will generate. Wouldn't a promotion of private education help create additional funds? Yes, but at what cost? I'm not a supporter of the private sector in education. At the end of the day, they are focused on profit first. I agree with her completely. We want to keep healthcare under the purview of the government. We cannot trust private corporations to act in education's best interest. We can only trust them to try to make as much profit off of it as they can. So I agree with Kara. It's out of the question. We must keep it. We must not privatize education. What are you working towards, Pascal? I personally want to improve the low quality of healthcare in the rural areas. So both of them have similar views. That's good. We can definitely do a lot with that. So I created draft plans to increase the salary of doctors and to upgrade their equipment of the hospitals. I can do more with an increased budget. Additionally, a privatization plan to promote private investments in the healthcare system could allocate extra funds. Isn't access to healthcare in rural areas an issue? Access is an issue, but not as critical as improving the quality in these areas. The lack of experienced personnel and equipment causes poor treatment, resulting in many deaths. Okay, so they want to increase the quality of healthcare in rural areas rather than increase its accessibility. Apparently, that's less of a problem than apparently this is more of a problem than the access. That's good to know. Quality is a higher problem than access currently. I do hope to create competition and increase the quality of healthcare with the privatization effort. Not okay with privatization. Just making that absolutely clear for the identical reasons, as I said, to education. They are the same. This will not happen. But you must realize that privatizing our healthcare system would increase the price of treatment and make access worse for the average citizen. The decision not to promote more state control would cost the Sorge people dearly. My expectation from our government is that we understand and focus on the needs of the people. Minister Walda, I have bailed out people in need instead of businesses. Trust me, my priorities are correct. This is a more confrontational statement, but I think directly pointing to what I've done before is good for reassurance and good for, confidence in, yes, I have done this and I will continue to keep doing this. That's how I feel about this statement. It has shown your dedication, but there are many years ahead of us. This is just the beginning of the journey. Fair enough. No matter how small a step, it is still progress. Did we cover all the necessary subjects? One more thing. I wish to raise my concern about how your scheduled meeting with the Gazprom chairman and former president, Mr. Alfonso. By negotiating with Alfonso and his company, you have an opportunity to secure better labor conditions for blue-collar Gazprom employees. This could be a triumph for all Narbel. What is there to negotiate, Pascal? The standards for Gazprom workers are already at rock bottom. President Rain can and must demand better. Nevertheless, it is worth acknowledging that the corporation's significant contribution to job creation in Narbel and other poverty-stricken regions. Persuading the chairman to make concessions might prove to be a formidable task. If we do this right, we can find a solution that advances both the economy and the interests of laborers. That would be quite the impressive feat. You'd make headlines for it. This matter is close to my heart. I would personally be grateful if you were able to resolve the concerns raised by Katerina Horton and her fellow labor representatives. It would be difficult to imagine a CEO like Alfonso giving benefits to workers without him personally gaining from it. Gazprom relies on us just as we rely on them. We can find a path to compromise. The middle way often sways perilously close to the status quo. We must ensure that any negotiations genuinely benefit the people and not just uphold the interests of corporate giants. She's absolutely correct. I agree with her completely. Thank you for your input, Kara. But I will stress to President Rain how important it is that the door to dialogue remain open. I also agree with this. Ideology should never get in the way of bringing about tangible, lasting change. I'm encouraged by the willingness of Mr. Manager and Mr. Alfonso to meet with me. It's a step forward. We shall keep you no longer. Thank you both for the discussions. I do hope we won't repeat the same mistakes again and again. Have a good day, Mr. President. The ministers left, and I prepared to leave for other official business in the city. The Gaston meeting was just one of the many events I was scheduled to attend over the next few days. As I made my way out, the weather was noticeably cold, but it didn't keep a group of USP supporters from coming out to cheer us on the streets. By looking at the citizens' attire, it was easy to understand the current state of Narbel. Some people were wearing clothes a few sizes too large. Some kids did not even have shoes. Yet there was hope in their eyes. They were excited to see their president in the city. All right. Let's make good on that. First, let's quickly take a look at the reports. Arcadia builds military base in Lesbia. Sounds about right. CSP leaders discuss Helheland, the disputed island, of course. Labor strike at Gassom, interesting. Have initiated a labor strike. This industrial action follows disagreements over wages, working conditions, and workers' rights. Okay. We can leverage that to force Gassom to make concessions against workers, make concessions for the laborers, for the union, and simultaneously secure part of the energy industry. Yeah? In Narbel, the Communist Party of Sordland, the Labor Union of Sordland, has organized a strike against Gaston. Good. Young Swords member found decapitated. Jesus. Repeals of the Energy Protection Act failed. So. Wow, wait, hang on. The majority of the assembly, led by USP and NFP, voted against the repeal. 179 to 71. That's huge. That's a massive margin. Huh. Interesting. Okay. Completely against the threshold reform. Oh, wait a minute. Casero Kibner, leader of the NFP, has announced today that the NFP is completely against any threshold reform. He specifically emphasized that this would lead to unwanted elements entering the assembly, and he's outright against any changes to the 10% threshold. Okay, look, I do not want to work with the NFP in any situation. Frankly, I'm completely comfortable telling them to eat dirt. However, if we're in a position where we can leverage that specific concession to gain more support, that might be worthwhile. Maybe. I genuinely do not know. They probably won't back any reform plan, though. So I'm not going to put too much stake in them. They're fascist. I don't need to work with them. There are only 40 seats in the assembly. I simply don't need them. I'm happy to crush them. However, the reform is going to be a contentious issue because no one wants the threshold to increase, aside from the PFJP and the British Party and the Communists. But beyond that, not really. We'll see. Fuck these guys, though. Workers' rights bill nears completion. Excellent. Morbel mine disaster. Uh-oh. A coal mine has collapsed in Morbel. Initial investigations show that an underground fire has started due to the neglect in working situation by the Nadam mining group. Current death toll is 82 and counting. How the fuck did that happen? Lauren primarily operates in Lauren and Berger regions. Limited operation in Velhen, Lesbia, and Magnolia. Interesting. This is a national corporation, though, so this shouldn't have happened. We'll need to increase working conditions. We'll need to make that better. Sol needs to answer for his crimes. Shocking misogynist rally. Labor union rights march. Okay. Ew. Meeting with manager and Alfonso on Gassom. Okay. Gonna have to lock in for this one. Let me take a sip of water first. Alright. Let's do this. After a series of intense meetings with Kara and Pascal, I decided to take some much-needed rest to recharge. Lucien and Peter were laboring tirelessly in the capital, uniting democratically leaning reformers for the crucial task of drafting a new constitution. Meanwhile, Gus Manger had invited me to visit the Gasholm headquarters in Narbel. It was situated in Ornobel, a neighborhood on the city's outskirts. Next to it was the Demenoy Gas Reserve, a prominent natural gas source consisting of 4 large fields. As our motorcade made its way through the Ornobel district, I noted the neighborhood's state of disrepair. The roads were bumpy, marked by potholes, while the buildings surrounding us appeared run down and dilapidated. The community had apparently endured a prolonged period of neglect. We came to a halt at the entrance gates of the facility. A sizable mural depicting the Gaston logo had been painted on a nearby wall. Adjacent to the mural, a group of individuals wearing blue work vests had assembled, holding what looked like protest signs. Sarah skillfully parked the car and bringing our journey to a smooth and elegant conclusion. Gus greeted us warmly as we stepped out of the vehicle. Good day, President Rain. Welcome to Gaston's Narbel operations. I trust Ministers Valda and Benoit didn't overwhelm you with their demands. Good to see you, Gus. I wanted to talk to you about what we can do to help the development here. Perfect. That's exactly what I hope to accomplish during today's discussions. My job is to improve the conditions of places like these. Mr. President, I've been brainstorming a little something. The Gruny Rural Investment Plan. I reckon it's got the potential to breathe new life into our rural communities out in Gruny. We could consider a few things. For starters, we could give the farming business a boost with some subsidies, or we could steer towards modernizing existing farms with machinery and tech. Or, there's another thought, we could pour resources into developing crop breeds tailor-made for Gruny conditions. If it works out, we could roll this out across Sordland. Interesting. So, upfront farming subsidies, modernizing equipment, or research into new crops. Very interesting. He kept talking as he guided me into the Gaston building. Mr. President, I get the appeal of that green bill that's been making rounds in the assembly. But I'm telling you, if we put the brakes on that and funnel those funds towards the Gruny plan instead, we could make some real strides without spooking potential investors. It's a tough call, Gus. I need to weigh the environmental implications and the economic benefits. I'm going with the green plan because, yeah, we need to weigh the environmental implications, and I think we can allow the economy to grow through other means. So I'm going to be prioritizing the environmental implications about that. But also, I think the green plan will have a lot of economic benefits as well. That's all I'm asking for, Mr. President. Just give this plan a fair shake. I will do that. Our talk was interrupted by a noise coming from the outside building. We looked out to the nearest window. A sleek helicopter was cutting through the sky, sunlight glinting off its polished surface as it descended towards us. On it was our next appointment, Evald Alfonso. Alfonso sure knows how to make an entrance. The man loves his theatrics. Before we meet him, I wanted to bring up one more piece of assembly business. The workers' rights bill. Look, I'm all for giving hard-working folks what they deserve, but isn't it a bit hasty to push this while we're still stuck in a recession? The way I see it, short-term wins might end up costing us big time in the long term. Gus, I get what you're saying, but isn't it high time we put people before profits? I see where you're coming from, Mr. President, but a prosperous economy helps everyone, the workers included. If we're all sinking, nobody's winning. You're just wrong on this one. Workers' rights come first. That's it. Like, we can fix the economy another way. We can fix the economy without sacrificing workers' rights. These things are not mutually exclusive in any sense of the word. We can do both. We must do both. Both are absolutely necessary if we want to do anything good with our administration. Please come this way. Evald and I have something exciting news to share with you. I have faith that it won't leave us hanging. I don't want to just say I'm here because I want to, talk about things generally speaking. After convincing arguments about the railway project, I was curious about what else we could achieve. I'm flattered, Mr. President, and I'm glad that you made the right choice, of course. By the way, I still don't believe tourists should be trusted with such a monumental mega project. They need to walk before they can run, and I'm saying this as a guy who actually almost likes Franz Richter. I think it's time we let fresh and fast new faces have a shot. Calculated risks, Mr. President. Taurus is not the right call, but don't mind me. I'm just a civil servant who wants what's best for the Sorge people. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure, mister, but those are, other people's immigrants. They don't, our labor standards don't apply to them. Dude, come on. Come on. I'm very happy with Taurus. I think that decision will hold strong, even if there's bumps along the way. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the elevator. I hope he doesn't fuck up this negotiation by complaining about Taurus. He pushed open a door. Also, I do think he's a lackey of Tusk. I think he has some very, very direct interests in underhull construction. I'm fairly confident in saying that. Because he does have direct shares in Gasom, I know that much. He pushed open a door. We walked down yet another hallway, seemingly in the direction we'd just come from. Like a maze, isn't it? That's Canali architecture for you. The hallways were lined with doors. Glass panels in them revealed workers in suits and ties, many of foreign origin, busy in their pristine office. A stark contrast to the blue-collar workers outside working with machinery, transportation, and maintenance. The whole complex feels very hands-on deck. I can tell an intricate operation when I see one. It took decades for Evald, and the workers, of course, to create an enterprise of such global competitive potential. Ah, here's the elevator. Evald ought to be up there already. There's a separate entrance by the helipad. We stepped into the elevator, Gus punched the code, and we began our ascent. Just remember, Alfonso's our friend. We've got the foundations for a great deal. The door's open. Here we are, Evald, my friend. Evald Alfonso stood up from his chair. He had on a perfectly tailored suit that he wore as casually as pajamas. Gus, you old devil. Takes one to know one. As promised, I brought our guest of honor, President Rain. I hope you enjoyed seeing our facilities here. President Alfonso, it's nice to see what you have built from the inside. It's fine, nothing compared to the Gasom HQ in Holzord, of course. Still one of the standouts of the Maroon District. Please, let's have a seat. Let's talk. We sat down, some snacks and drinks were served. Multiple Gasom yearly finance reports were scattered across the table between us. It's been a while, Mr. Rain. Let me catch you up with my activities since I left office. Wants to talk about himself first, I see. I ventured to Xena, immersing myself in its vibrant culture, then traversed to the captivating landscapes of Anrakan Peninsula, and finally reunited with old acquaintances in Kiao. Along the way, I had the privilege of encountering remarkable individuals who have made significant contributions to their respective fields. My experience prompted a deep reflection of the essence of life. I came out of all of it with two words resonating in my head: reputation and legacy. These two pillars embody the lasting impact we leave behind, and the way we are remembered by others. With a cup of coffee in hand, he strolled over to the window, his gaze drawn to the expansive gas fields stretching before him. Towering mountains provided a majestic backdrop. Okay, I want to point out, I agree with 3. The focus on reputation and legacy is rooted in a capitalist framework that perpetuates individualism and inequality. Getting past the, jargon, I do believe that capitalism forces people to think about themselves as individuals with their own individual legacies, rather than thinking of people as, big communities who are all striving to achieve great things. So I agree with this, but I'm not going to say that. This is a negotiation, right? So I'm going to say, our image and our perception are a key force that shape our lives, but they can also be burdensome. I also agree with that. He gazed out for a moment longer as he contemplated what I had said, and turned back to us. I have been thinking about my own legacy and reputation, and I refuse to be remembered as a failed reformer. I put so many years of my life into this corporation, and then I left it all and devoted myself to serving the people of Sordland. And serve you did. Sordland would be much worse off without you. Yes, you helped rescue. Okay, a lot of these choices are less amicable, so I want to pick the more amicable option here. Yes, you helped rescue the country from Seoul's extreme protectionist and isolationist policies. Thankfully, I also agree with the statement, so that's good. The structure was rotting from the inside. It needed a shakeup. I'm not a fan of all the privatization, though, but that's just me. My Gasom is not nearly as bad off as the Sorge government was, but a shakeup was needed nonetheless. The latest figures show that Gasom will either have to decrease staff and operations by 40% in 1 year, or take on a crushing amount of debt. This is why we have decided to reach out to foreign investors. Okay, I think I can say this. I have concerns about relying too heavily on foreign investors. It's important to prioritize local ownership and maintain sovereignty over our national resources. I understand your concerns, but the future of Gascom is on the line. I guess that's fair. Rest assured, we will take measures to protect our interests and ensure responsible engagement. I appreciate you coming, though, Gus. Getting Regia interested in another investment is a major feat. We've got an amazing opportunity here. The demand for gas is steadily increasing from both international partners and the Sword State. All we have to do is ensure a consistent supply. The trouble is that right now, some of our fields are operating at only half of their capacity due to resource limitations, but we have significant potential for expansion, including 2 new fields that haven't been tapped. With the right amount of investment, we can expand resource extraction, effectively fulfill rising demand, and ensure long-term stability and profitability. There is the aforementioned interest from Regia, but the investment could also come from Sordland itself. I agree, that is hysterical. The fact that a leaving privatizer is coming to the state to bail his corporation is hysterical. I'm not saying it, but it is funny. You do know that Regia can't invest more than 20%. They do know that. If your analysis is correct, any investment would also make returns and secure further gas. Indeed, this deal has the potential to bolster both Gascom and Sordland. Together, we can create a historic opportunity. Why settle for being the top 10 energy exporters when we have the potential to compete with Arcadia and United Contana? Mr. Alfonso has neglected to mention that this is not an either-or proposition. Sordland can invest alongside Regia. We don't need another nation to take care of our energy company. Couldn't we keep this between Sordland and Gascom? I think there's a strong potential for a deep partnership. The government strengthens the security of gas, and the company can compete and grow. It would be more costly from the government's perspective, but a worthwhile endeavor. And after we draw other investors, the state can always sell shares for a higher price and make a return. The sound of sirens briefly distracted us. Through the window, we saw police cars driving down the street adjacent to the Gascom zone. We redirected our attention to the meeting. Evald looked at me. Mr. Ray, the foundation for a robust partnership is right here. It's high time we shift our focus towards sealing this deal. If we raise a minority investment, it would allow us to invest in further resource extraction in the gas fields and turn the company back to significant profitability. By significant, I mean that our projections showed that Gascom would be able to cover 80% of Sordland's gas needs in 3 years. That's huge. And we would achieve profits 4 times the value of our investment. 4 times. Okay. These seem like more specific options, so let me read these out. An enticing proposition. However, I would like to know more about the risks involved. What if the excavations do not yield the respective results? Good question. If we are to invest in Gascom, I want to make sure that the company is also committed to improving socioeconomic conditions in Narbel. I'm probably picking that because that's very, very, very important to me. 3. Your projections sound impressive. However, we need to consider the international market as well. How do we plan to compete against nations like Anarcha, Arcadia, and United Contana? Also, these are all excellent questions. However, 2 is of the utmost importance to me. So, if we are to invest in Gascom, I want to make sure that the company is also committed to improving the socioeconomic conditions in Narbel. I wholeheartedly agree. The well-being of Narbel citizens is a priority for Gascom. With this investment, we could certainly allocate some funds to improve the local infrastructure and create more jobs. Mr. President, I've been thinking, what if we tie Gascom's growth to Narbel's development? Get the company to invest in the community, you know? That way everyone wins. Interesting. Mr. President, your administration's commitment to a market economy aligns with our vision for a competitive Gascom. With a government investment, we can further liberalize the energy market, enhance our technologies, and compete globally. I don't think I want to invest with Regia. I think I want to keep this between us. I think I want to control as much of the gas sector as possible to make sure those resources are going directly to Sordland. Thriving market economy is the engine of prosperity and innovations. I believe in Gascom's potential to compete and succeed on these principles. Sure, I agree with that. I see the potential for Gascom to drive Sordland's energy independence, but we just need to make sure it's a sustainable solution. That's also a good response. I think I'm going to go with this. I'm heavily interested in the idea of Gascom investing in Narbel's development, but we need concrete actions, not just words. You're right to demand specifics. With this investment, we aim to improve the living conditions in Narbel by creating more jobs, providing better housing for our workers, and initiating an educational programs. Gassom is as committed to Narbel as it is to Sordland. It's about time Narbel got a leg up. Evald's plan sounds solid to me. More jobs, better living conditions. That's a step in the right direction. If the Swedish government chooses to invest, it would gain a voice in the broader company decisions, even as a minority stakeholder. The government could either liquidate its shares at a future date or continue to reap the long-term profits. A beneficial arrangement for all parties. Evald walked back over to the window. He stood there, silhouetted against the vast expanse of the gas fields. After a moment, he turned back to face us. His gaze was steady, the expectation clear in his eyes. The time had come to make a decision. Well, Mr. President, will Gassom and Sordland make history or not? Yeah, okay, I don't even think I need to go too much into this decision. So, co-investment with Regia is nice in theory. It would reduce the risk, but frankly, I don't trust Regia's intentions due to their connections with Rumburg, and frankly, we don't really need them. I want to control as much of the gas industry as possible to make sure that, standards are being met and that the profits and energy of the company is actually going back to Sordland and the people. And frankly, if they have explicitly committed to improving the living conditions of Narbel, then great. With the investment, we aim to improve the living conditions of Narbel, creating more jobs, providing better housing, and initiating an education program. That sounds good to me. So for me, it's a simple answer. We're investing alone. Sordland will provide the majority of the funds, and Gus will tell Regia to back off. -2 government budget. Yeah, I'm very confident in this decision. I think we'll make back the returns monetarily. I think we'll improve the conditions of the workers, and I think controlling more of the gas industry will go directly back into supporting our workforce and our country. So I'm very happy with this. I'm very, very, very happy with how this went. Your decision shows a commitment to Sordland's energy independence. We won't let you down. That's a bold move, Mr. President, but I reckon it's the right one. Gasholm's success will be Sordland's success. The worried workers will have no fears about job security thanks to this state intervention. Before we dive into the celebrations, I've allocated time during this meeting for President Rain to discuss any concern regarding Gasholm's treatment of its workers and its effects on Narbel. The labor union, along with the Communist Party of Sordland, has rallied substantial support from Gasholm workers in Narbel, advocating for local improved conditions. Alfonso looked at me and nodded. Our duty is to listen and take action. That's the mandate granted to us by the public. While sometimes people may not always recognize what's in their best interest, do you have a proposal in mind, Mr. President? Ooh, that's interesting. So we have 3 options, aside from wrapping up the meeting, which, no. The workers of Gasholm need better housing, access to healthcare, and opportunities for education. As a leading industry there, Gasholm can't ignore its responsibility. Second, the wages of Gasholm blue-collar workers need to be increased. They are the backbone of your operations. Also a good choice. 3, I expect Gasholm to contribute significantly to local charities to aid in the city's recovery. Absolutely not. Not necessary. Here's the thing about local charities, right? It shifts the blame on communities it shifts the responsibility of the government to provide for its people and the corporations to provide for its workers onto local charities doing, individual work. I do not believe in that at all. They should be doing this directly. It is their money, it's their responsibility. They should do it. The question is 1 or 2. And it's a hard decision, to be honest, because increasing the wages of blue-collar workers is obviously a huge benefit to them. It'll increase their ability to do things much more. They'll have increased purchasing power, which is good for the economy. However, I think Gasholm investing directly into the infrastructure, into the housing, into the education, into the healthcare, and being a leading industry in that, I think that will have far better long-term benefits and very good short-term benefits. If workers no longer don't have to worry about paying for their housing, paying for their healthcare and education opportunities, or they have to pay less for those things, then they're in a position to, spend more on other market goods. And I think this is going to lead to a far stronger base from which to operate off of. So I'm going to say this. Workers of Gasholm need better housing, access to healthcare, and opportunities for education. As leading industry there, Gasholm can't ignore its responsibility. A good point. I see the potential for Gaslam to play a larger role in supporting our workers and the community. I will personally oversee initiatives to provide private housing, health, and education support for our blue-collar workers. Private housing. Okay. I mean, I guess I don't love the fact that it's private, but they will be investments regardless. So, hey, that works for me. That works for me. Private housing, health, and education support for our blue collar. Basically, okay, well, you know what I'm saying? I guess this is basically providing insurance, basically a company insurance policy, which is good on its own. It's like, okay, we'll provide these things for our workers directly from our company. That works for me. That works for me. That's reassuring to hear. I trust that you'll follow through on these commitments, or these are significant steps. I look forward to seeing these changes implemented swiftly. I'm going to take the more assertive option. Evald, your personal commitment to these initiatives speaks volumes. This could be a turning point for Gaslam and for Narbel. Well, Mr. President, we're committed to... Suddenly, the meeting was interrupted. A quiet murmur of a conversation from outside the room grew louder, followed by the sounds of hurried footsteps. A member of the private security team entered the room, his face taut with urgency. He approached Alfonso, leaned to whisper something in his ear. Evald nodded solemnly, his gaze meeting mine in serious intensity. Gentlemen, it seems we have an unexpected situation outside. Some protesters from the labor union have blocked the main vehicular exits. Katharina Horton and Dennis Staller seem to be leading the group. It would be difficult to leave the way we came without causing trouble. Well, that's a pickle. What's our move, Evald? I have a helicopter ready. We can leave undetected and avoid the chaos and potential danger. I think we should face the crowd head on. They're striking workers, and frankly, we've made strides to, make sure that their needs are met. We should face them head on. That is your prerogative, Mr. President. Following the violent events of late, I heavily recommend against facing any crowd. Mr. President, I advise you to leave via helicopter just in case. I can stay back and update the crowds on the discussion today. Sergeant Faulkner rushed in. Mr. President, I have discussed the situation with the Presidential Guard and the police security. They are advising us not to go out the way we came in. More police are on the way. You must make a decision, Mr. President. Everyone waited. The tense silence of the room stood in stark contrast to the buzz of the ever-growing crowd outside. Bush Freedom Front under new leadership. Interesting. Devlen Arj. Okay. Leave Gaslam facility in Narbel. The volatile situation has emerged outside the Gaslam facility, with a sizable crowd of protesters amassing, their grievances fueled by the underlying tensions, present a complex scenario for us to navigate. The decision on our course of action could dramatically influence the outcome of the situation. We're going to address the protesters head on. The reason is we've made significant strides, and if we're going to address these people, we're going to truly alleviate their concerns. We can't just scamper away in our nice fancy helicopter. We need to go out there and tell them what we are planning to do. This inspires confidence. This inspires trust. This inspires growth. This is what we need to do, my opinion. Address the protesters and leave via car. All right. As we stepped out of the towering front gate of the Gaslam facility, I immediately became aware of how tense the situation was. Gus Manger stood to my right, his silhouette barely distinguishable from the monolithic edifice behind us. Sarah stood to my left, his eyes scanning the crowd with the precision of a hawk. The Gaslam security had drawn their weapons in anticipation, forming a bristling wall around the perimeter. The Presidential Guard, in stark contrast, stood tall and unflinching at the entrance, shielding us from the sea of angry workers surrounding us. The shouts of the crowd were deafening, the hostility palpable. Staller and Horton stood at the forefront with fire in their eyes. With a deep breath, I prepared to address them. Gus extended a megaphone towards me. Okay. Fellow swords, hardworking people of Gaslam, or good people of Narbel. I'm going to say, because these are strikers and picket line workers, so I'm going to address them very, very directly. To the hardworking employees of Gaslam, we stand with you today. Our shared goal is simple, to demand improved living and working conditions for everyone. Remember, we are united by a common goal, a prosperous Gaslam that cares for its workers. It's a fight we all must face together. Speeches and more speeches from President Rain, but what exactly was decided today? We need more than pretty words. We need substance. She's right, Mr. President. We need details. What's going to change for the workers? Now hold on a moment. President Rain is committed to bringing about real change. His actions and decisions demonstrate this clearly, even if it doesn't fit your narrative. Is that so, Manger? All we've seen are decisions that favor the likes of you and Ned Alfonso, not the common workers. It's not about narratives, Mr. Manger. It's about ensuring a fair and dignified life for the working class, something your policies have consistently failed to do. Change is often slow and gradual. I don't want to say that. Dennis, the focus, I understand your skepticism, Dennis, but I assure you, my administration is devoted to bringing about better conditions for our workers. That's what I'm going to say, because that is exactly what we've done in the negotiations, so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to be signing the Workers' Rights Bill soon. So that'll be another, clear decision showing where my priorities are. Your words are compelling, President Rain, but can they truly outweigh the years of corporate dominance? Your intentions sound noble, President Rain, but intentions alone don't feed families or pay bills. We need concrete actions. Your neglect of our nation's healthcare system will harm millions. Mr. President, we demand that you support the upcoming Workers' Rights Bill. The labor force of Sordland will be watching your next move closely. Furthermore, we want reform. Reduce the election threshold and change the Constitution to make a more democratic and fairer nation. People sort of elected me to meet and not doing that. I understand the concerns and frustration many of you have. Rest assured, we are here, we are listening, and we are committed to addressing these issues. Too vague. Can we get more specific? We must recognize that our country can't solve all its problems at once. We're working hard and making progress, but our problems won't simply vanish. Okay, I think this is better. We are committed to addressing these issues. Despite the sharp words exchanged, the crowd remained eerily calm. It seemed like they were waiting, their collective breath held in anticipation of something more. Suddenly, a reporter pushed through the crowd, brandishing a microphone towards me. The locals of Narbel have suffered under the impact of Gaslam for years. What concrete steps is Gaslam going to take for the benefit of the local community? I'm going to go for the more assertive decision. Through hard negotiations, we've secured a commitment from Gaslam to significantly better the lives of its employees. Upgraded housing, assured healthcare, and opportunities for education are now guaranteed. This is a vital step towards building a more resilient workforce. A change came over the crowd. The angry shouts were replaced with cries of disbelief, then joy. Eventually, all fell silent as they waited for Dennis and Katarina to respond. If these promises materialize, it could mean a significant improvement in the lives of our comrades at Gaslam. This is a start, albeit late. Let's hope it's not mere lip service. Private housing, healthcare, and education? That's indeed a shift from the status quo, Mr. President. While I commend its commitment to improve the lives of our Gaslam workers, we can only hope that this is not just another political gambit. A group of figures emerged from the crowd, adorned in an unmistakable scarlet attire. The Red Youth had arrived. The sight of them triggered nostalgia, memories of days filled with protests and camaraderie during our time at university. I realized this was no longer a mere protest. It was a symbol of a broader, more potent struggle. The police began reorganizing the ranks, adopting defensive postures. Could you shed some light on the possible deal between the Sorsh government and Gaslam? What role does the Kingdom of Rija play in this arrangement? The government of Sordland has decided to solely invest in Gaslam. We believe this will lead to a direct positive impact on the citizens of Sordland. A surprising but potentially promising decision, Mr. President. Let's hope your confidence isn't misplaced. Encouraging President Rain, as long as your government's drive to recoup your investment doesn't take precedent over Gaslam's struggling labor force. Nearby, a Gaslam security officer and a presidential guard member were conversing in hushed tones. I saw them glance over the crowd, now calmer, but still restless. President Rain, while the crowd appears somewhat subdued, I would advise we exercise caution. It may be best to conclude your address and proceed to the vehicle. Thank you for looking out for me, Serge. Let's get out of here. I'll remain here, Mr. President. The crowd seems calmer now, and I believe I can answer their queries and maintain the peace. You should go ahead. Mr. President, thank you for your willingness to address us. Let's continue these important conversations moving forward. You've shown courage today. We'll see if your actions match your words. Until next time. We've shown courage together. Now we will hold you accountable to your promises. The troubles of the laborers are not over, and neither is the work of our union. Do I want to be explicit with the Red Youth affiliation, or do I want to just simply confidently shake their hands? I think this will give them more trust. Yeah, as an old Red Youth member, I can personally say that the work you do is of utmost importance. Thank you. A flutter of whispers rippled through the sea of onlookers, their eyes darting back and forth between us in surprise. A few broke into scattered applause. The initially hesitant clapping grew louder, and jubilant cheers and whistles filled the air. I saw the Red Youth members standing at the edge of the crowd with their arms folded, a hint of approval in their eyes. As I readied myself to leave, I turned back to Katerina and Dennis one last time. Yes, the dialogue has only started. I assure to you both, my commitment to progress and change is unwavering. Together, we can ensure a prosperous future for Sordland. The reporter jumped in. Can you clarify the current status of your personal relationship with Edvald? No more questions, please. Mr. President, if you could please proceed to the vehicle. Serge opened the door of the car and I lowered myself into the seat. The door closed behind me with a thud, sealing off the external noise. The crowd began to disperse, the individuals breaking away to let our convoy through. The guards took their positions nonetheless, forming a human barrier around the vehicle. The engine purred to life, and we began to move. I'm glad we're safely on our way, Mr. President. Thank you, Serge. I don't know what I'd do without you. I'm merely doing my job, Mr. President. Ensuring your safety is my top priority. The echoing voices of the protesters gradually subsided as we retreated from the scene and left Narbel behind. Okay. Okay, that went really, really, really well. I'm very, very happy for the results of that. A resounding vote for Gaslam's future. So this is from the right-wingers, for the far-right news outlet, so that's good to know. Sordland's government large-scale investment in Gaslam is a clarion call of confidence in our energy sector. This action underscores our government's commitment to strengthening domestic industries and preserving our energy sovereignty. Amid the cacophonies of detractors, it is clear that this financial boost could be the lifeline Gaslam needs to secure a stable future. The workers often are the backbone of our nation. This move by Gaslam will not only improve their standard of living, but also boost morale and productivity within the company. A win for traditional values. Sure, whatever. A leader who listens. President's address at Gaslam. A strategic leap. Good. A beacon of hope. Gaslam workers' welfare takes a leap forward. Gaslam sees Sordland government's robust investment. Overwhelmingly positive responses from the crowd. President articulate, deliberate, and compelling arguments serve to rekindle the faith of the Swedish government, shedding a ray of hope on the current challenges plaguing our nation. A triumph for worker activism. A pricey misstep. Really? Come on. Throwing money at systemic... whatever. Everybody seems to be supporting this, so I think that went about as fucking fantastic as it possibly could have. I'm very happy. I'm very, very happy with how that went. I'll get Sea of Thieves soon, I promise. Thank you, Caleb. Oh, okay, here we go. This is a very critical decision. Okay. An investigation of the influence of the Young Swords and the Red Youth organizations on the post-assassination unrest has concluded. Both organizations haven't officially organized or called for illegal actions, but several low to mid-level leaders from both have links to insightful actions that led to deaths, injuries, and instabilities. This allows us to ban the organizations. We either ban the Young Swords, ban the Red Youth, ban both of them, or ban neither of them. Stability Order of 1954. Okay. What do we want to do here? So we're not banning the Red Youth, so that eliminates options 2 and 3. The Red Youth really, I mean, they're bad. Sorry, they're not even, no, they're not bad. I mean, I condemn the violence perpetrated between the Young Swords and the Red Youth is obviously destabilizing. It's obviously terrible. It's obviously a negative thing. However, my sincere opinion, the Red Youth are responding to the violence of the Young Swords, not necessarily vice versa. The Young Swords are nationalists. They're inciting violence. They're hateful. They're anti-immigration. They want to hurt, minorities and destabilize the government. The Red Youth, they're protesting in favor of workers' rights. So calling these things the same thing is not reasonable. I think the Red Youth are more responding to the Young Swords than vice versa. The Young Swords are nationalists, after all. They want fascist government. So, with that out of the way, either we don't ban either of them, which, in theory would be a call for, like, oh, even if we believe things that are disagreeable, it's allowed, free speech is allowed in this country. However, I'm fundamentally okay with banning them because it will reduce the effect of the nationalist bloc. It'll reduce the effect of the NFP. It'll strengthen our position by being able to crack down against the nationalists. And I think cracking down against the nationalists is a good thing for us. So for that reason, I'm going to ban the Young Swords. This will make us more stable. This will direct the people towards, frankly, a common enemy, because the Young Swords are an enemy. Again, they're fascists. Let's not overstate this. Yeah, so I think for those reasons, I'm going to ban the Young Swords. Stability Decree of 1954. Where is that? Oh, Young Swords banned. To address threats to public safety and maintain social order, the emergency decree has deemed the Young Swords as an illegal criminal organization. Also, they were stocking weapons. I know the Red Youth were doing that too, but I think these guys are a far bigger threat. Protect the welfare of citizens and uphold the principles of justice. Yeah. Limited human rights. Security laws in Sordland are relatively strict, and while they provide some levels of security to citizens, they also limit certain rights and freedoms. The government has implemented these laws to maintain social order and prevent threats to any national security. Interesting. I'll have to think about that. I'll have to consider that more carefully. I think this is the right decision, but I don't think that this is going to piss off the right wing, though. Maybe not banning either of them was the better decision, but it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. The ban states it is all strictly illegal and forbidden to carry symbols, clothing, or anything that can cause a person to be identified as a Young Swords member. Any persons who do not by the law will be risking at least 2 years sentence depending on the severity of the crime. Has opposed the ban strongly, with good majority of assembly, while a good majority of the assembly has been content with the decision. Good to know. Very good to know. Young Swords banned. After the conclusion of an investigation into the political youth organization, the Ministry of Interior and Justice, President Ray has acted swiftly against the Young Swords. They were linked to violent acts, linked to the circus shooting and the post-assassination site. Oh wait, yeah! They shot Circus. That's more than enough reason. Are assessing the situation and the shift in the political structure. Cracking down on the right, cool with me. Anti-Young Swords operation. Upon receiving the order, thousands of police officers conducted cease and desist operations against Young Swords. Our forces closed hundreds of organizational offices and affiliated businesses all around the country. Additionally, judges have been given orders to block all bank accounts and freeze assets. Dozens of peaceful protests from the members of the organization were forcefully dispersed. One shootout in Jen has lightly wounded 3 officers who are being treated in hospital. Most of the organizational capacity of the entity has ceased, but cleanup operations continue. All remaining elements from the Young Swords resisting the order are now being considered as violating the law and are being arrested. Good. Crackdown against the fascists. That's fine by me. Grunny Regeneration and Economic Nurturing Act. Oh, this is a short one. Cool. The Green has been proposed by the Assembly, aiming to encourage a more sustainable approach to industry in Grunny. Section 1 of this act would impose stricter regulations on industrial pollution and waste disposal, particularly in the Grunny region. Businesses not complying with these new standards may face hefty fines, the revenue from which, would be invested back into environmental recovery projects. Section 2 proposes to offer tax breaks to businesses that can demonstrate a significant reduction in their environmental impact over a period of time. A small investment fund is created for eco-friendly business practices. Good. That works for me. Sign it. One government budget, but a direct investment in Grunny. Initiative designed to stimulate economic growth, promote innovation, bolster local businesses. Strategic investment is expected to generate a supportive environment for sustainable development and prosperity in the Grunny region. Great. A leap in the dark? I don't think so. What about you? Green Bill sign it. Victory for the environment. Good. Excellent. Okay. Let us continue. Actually, I'm going to take a sip of water first. Ooh. They want to lower our budget. We only got $2. Yeah, I don't actually know how this is calculated. Like, I don't know how many one government budget is, like, how many Swordish Ren, or, you know, in our case, dollars that amounts to, but I don't know. It's there. Sorry, I need to fix this one last thing. Okay, we're back. Actual game suggestion, because I feel like you'd love it. I can't remember it. If I mentioned it. Slay the Princess. I've seen that game around. I've heard it's good, but $2 is all we need. Yeah, we fund entire investment projects off $2. That's how bad inflation's gotten. Anyway, yeah, Slay the Princess. That sounds like a fun game to stream. I could see myself doing that. All right. Finalization of the drafted constitutional changes. Better than most countries, billions in debt. Let's hope we don't go into debt. We'll probably go into debt, not gonna lie. But if we can stabilize the economy, that'll be a huge win for us. But we might be in debt soon enough. This is not looking good. We haven't even done the budget yet. So that's gonna cost a lot of fucking money. Oh boy, the economy's fucked. Anyway. I was walking to my office, since today was the day to edit and make the final changes to the proposal to change the constitution of Sordland. The Reform Committee finally bore tangible results, and the draft of the changes were about to be presented to me. I walked in the marble corridors of the palace, thinking about the huge decisions I was going to make. At the entrance of the office, my secretary Livia greeted me. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Livia. How are you today, sir? I'm perfectly fine. Good to hear. She paused before taking my coat. It looked like she had something on her mind. Miss Suzerain, can you give me a hint about your reform plan? If you ask me, taking away the judge's immunities is long overdue, but it might anger a lot of people in these halls. I'll take that into consideration. I hope you'll keep me informed. I'll take your coat now. Livia left to hang up my coat. I entered the office and sat down. Not long after, Peter, Lucian, and Nia arrived. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning. Time to finally get this proposal going. Peter placed the draft in front of me. All right, this is also going to be significant. Let's do this. After your modifications, we will be starting the process. Can we go over each of the points that are in discussion for the draft? Well, apart from the first 2 sections of decreasing the Supreme Court's authority and limiting the presidential vetoes, nothing else has been agreed on unanimously. We could start talking about Section 3. This is about the impeachment process of the president. Currently, in cases of high treason and breaking the Constitution, the Supreme Court may try to impeach the president. Most reformists want the impeachment to be initiated by the Assembly. They think they do not have any power over the potential rogue presidents that would abuse their power. The Assembly should have oversight over the president. It is the most democratic institution. This law is particularly dangerous for you in this case. We will be going against the old guard, and if we prove to be successful in the Assembly, they'll be looking for anything they can declare unconstitutional to tackle you. All they need is the Supreme Court to impeach you. We should define a better impeachment process. Yes, we will be collaboratively working on the specifics. Section 4. This is regarding the appointment of the ministers. Currently, the president is free to appoint anyone from the members of the Assembly. Nobody else is involved in the process. There is definitely demand to involve the Assembly in this process. We can introduce a confidence vote. That was my suggestion as well. I'm sure the reforms would completely support that. The fifth section is about our infamous electoral threshold. Many reformists want to lower the threshold as much as possible. Mr. Richter and his PFJP definitely want to see the change on this topic. They find our 10% threshold to be anti-democratic, which is something I also agree with. Yes, but this is a delicate matter. The party, and I mean not even Albin, want us to change this threshold. They think that would destroy our party in the long term. Not wrong. The 10% threshold is that which allowed us to control half of the Assembly with around 1/3 majority in the elections. The high threshold is the reason resource politics has become so isolated. You're right. Even after Sol's resignation, we still have 3 parties in the Assembly. Even Mr. Keebner's NFP was barely elected. Don't forget that the Communist Party and the Workers' Party of Bolivia both had close to 10% vote in the last election. You would be opening their way into the parliament in the future if you were to decrease the threshold. It is important that you realize this. Of course, that would also mean the USP might lose its majority in the Assembly, sir. Don't worry. With these reforms, we will be even more popular. I hope it works out, Mr. President. Section 6. This is about the presidential decrees. Reformists demand more limitations to the president's executive powers. Mr. Richter has demanded them to be completely removed. I have suggested to bring some limitations to decrees regarding their applicability. While we keep them, we should try to make sure that they will only be used in emergency situations. We could also make it dependent on an enabling act from the Assembly. Sure, it would make the whole process longer, but as long as we have a majority, nothing really changes. We'll work with the reformists to limit the use of decrees. Friends will probably demand that we remove them completely, but he forgets that Sordland is a presidential republic. Next one is Section 7, term limits. Term limits are necessary. I agree. We can't allow someone like Sold holding onto his seat for 2 decades again. Hey, if people keep electing one person, that means they really are content. The masses are scared of change. Even Sol knew when he had to leave, but we'll leave it to the president to decide. I don't know. I think electing the same person over and over again leads to stagnation. However, if someone is truly popular and people want to keep electing them, I do feel that they should. I don't actually know how I feel about term limits as a broad thing. I would have to put a lot more thought into that one. And I'll say this. I will take my time and seriously consider the options before setting on one. Chances are I will be going with the term limits decision just on account of it being more popular with the reformists and getting me more clout in that direction, and that's good with me. It'll be helpful, gaining more of their support. Now I'll move on to the 8th section. We are reaching the end. It's the question about the immunity of the justices. While the anti-old guard sentiment is increasing, there are talks that taking away their immunity would give us authority over the judiciary. I do not support taking away their power for yourself, Mr. President. The judiciary must remain independent and long-lasting. While I agree that the current court members are problematic, this is no way to resolve it. The law is supposed to ensure their judiciary's independence by giving them legal protection so they can't be pressured. Well, they need absolute immunity in theory, but look at what reality got us. We've got to deal with the most corrupt Chief Justice in the world, with no chance to deal with him. maybe we shouldn't make the Supreme Court our enemies just yet. Let's keep the reforms light. This is a better strategy. We'll need to sway some of their members to succeed after all. And the last one is the question about Sol's legacy. Basically, his member of honor law. It gave him absolute immunity even when he's retired. He's a permanent member of the assembly as well, but luckily he doesn't really attend anymore. According to the Constitution, the member of honor not only has legal immunity, but the state also covers most of their expenses, as well as providing security at all times. It can only be given to someone by an absolute majority vote in the assembly, and the approval of the president. That's why only Tarkin Sol himself has that title. He basically gave it to himself right after his military coup. This law is basically made to save the colonel, and it has symbolic importance of Sordland because of it. We must get rid of the senseless law that protects him. He should be able to face justice for the atrocities that had taken place during his rule. I agree. We should abolish this position. It's not fair, it's not just, it's not democratic. Get rid of it. The reformists would be completely behind that. Well, regardless of what Mr. Rain decides, we'll work together to push this agenda. I thank you all for your input. After placing the committee's report and my own notes in front of me, I buried myself in the papers. Alright, let's do this. Section 1. Presidential vetoes. According to Articles 77 and 82, the President may veto a bill by returning it to the Assembly with a written statement. The articles do not contain any information on how to override a veto. As a consequence, the President has an absolute veto power that cannot be overridden with a supermajority in the Grand National Assembly of Sordland. Let's limit the vetoes. I think removing the vetoes will basically not allow me to crush the NFPs, the fascists' bills. And I want to be able to have that opportunity. And frankly, since they're in the minority and most of our parliament is center to left liberal leaning, I think limiting the vetoes is a good choice. And the reformers will still be happy with the change. So, limit the vetoes. 3/5 majority can override. This one's obvious. Section 2, Constitutional Amendment Process. According to Article 5 of the Constitution, an amendment that has the support of at least 150 signatures may be proposed in the Grand National Assembly. A 2/3 majority vote in the Grand National Assembly and a simple majority vote in the Supreme Court is required for the amendment as a consequence. As a consequence, the Supreme Court, which is not part of the elected legislative branch, has voting rights and gives them enormous power over the amendment process. Remove their votes. Yes. Alright. Section 3. Impeachment of the President. According to Article 17, the President of Sordland is not responsible for the actions performed in the exercise of presidential duties, except in the case of high treason, violation of the Constitution. In such cases, the President may be impeached by the Supreme Court in joint session, with an absolute majority of its members. Therefore, the impeachment process only includes the Supreme Court, and it gives them great power over the executive. The Assembly and the Supreme Court may impeach with majority in both. Good. Section 4. Appointment of the Ministers. According to the Constitution, the President appoints the ministers to the Council of Ministers from the elected members of Assembly. We may introduce a confidence vote by adding the line, the President may nominate the ministers, which will require a confidence vote from the Grand National Assembly for their appointment. Or include the National Assembly more in the process, with the Grand National Assembly may nominate a list of ministers which the President may appoint. We talked about the confidence vote in the conversation, and I think it's the best choice. I think we should be able, we're the president, we're appointing our own ministers. I think we should be allowed to make that decision as the president. But a confidence vote is a good added security to be like, okay, yeah, we agree that this person is a suitable choice. So yeah, confidence vote is required. That's good with me. Section 5, electoral threshold. According to Article 50, a political party needs a minimum of 10% of the total national vote to win seats in the Grand National Assembly. The votes of the parties who pass the threshold are redistributed proportionally, meaning USP, who currently holds the lead, would be the main beneficiary. Decreasing the threshold may allow the Workers' Party of Lydia and the Communist Party of Sordland to be elected in the next elections. Okay. Here's the thing. The Conservatives are most likely, not even the Conservatives, my party in general, are most likely going to have a problem with this. However, they're also going to have a problem with the removing of Sol's legacy. So, I think if I can get both of these amendments through, I will, because I think that's a good thing. I think making this more democratic is a good option. However, making a moderate change and playing that off of the repeal to President Sol's veto power, his member of honor rule, I think that could have the best benefits long term. Because I don't think they'll accept both of them. We can't be too radical because they'll just shut us down. So let's decrease the threshold to 8%, and we can change it if we're forced. Section 6. Section 6. According to Article 18 and 51, the President is able to issue decrees on political, social, and economic issues that would carry the force of law. They could not contradict the Constitution and are subject to judicial review. Therefore, the President may issue decrees in many subjects without going through the Grand National Assembly. However, the Assembly may pass legislation on the same subjects to override presidential decrees. We may include the Assembly in the process by requiring the Enabling Act from the Assembly to be able to enact decrees or remove them completely, making the Assembly the sole lawmaking authority. I think this will get us reformist support, and for that reason, I'm okay with decrees requiring an enabling act. We don't need to remove them, but requiring an enabling act is a good compromise, I think. According to the Section 7. According to the Constitution, the President shall be elected to serve for 4 years. However, there is no mention of a term limit, allowing one individual to be able to run, to be elected, and serve as president without limits. Introduced for limit of 2 terms for the reformist support. That's what I'm doing. The Constitution gives the justices of the Supreme Court absolute immunity before the law and describes no procedure of impeachment, making them untouchable by the other branches of government. We may describe an impeachment process by giving the Grand National Assembly the right to propose an impeachment on a justice on the legal grounds or unconstitutional behavior. As much as I agree with that, and as much as I think that would be a good thing, we need to keep the judiciary independent because most people simply want it that way, and we do not have the political clout or the backing to make a change this aggressive. So we're simply going to not change it for now. Section 9. Member of Honor Rights of Tarkin Soul. Article 99 of the Constitution defines the Member of Honor title and the rights their members may exercise. A Member of Honor has absolute immunity and is considered to be a permanent member of the Grand National Assembly. They are given control of their own personal security team, provided the state's presidential guards. A member is also eligible to live in a special private residence provided by the state for free. The only person who holds this title is Tarkin Soul. Every president becomes it? No. Remove the immunity of the Member of Honor. I mean, it's fine. It's a fine it's fine, but it's a pointless compromise, my opinion. I think we're simply better off abolishing the Member of Honor flatly. Yeah. I think he shouldn't be above the law, but I think getting rid of the Member of Honor just completely is simply the better option here. So we're going to abolish the Member of Honor title. And with that, we finish. After I made the final changes for the proposal, I showed it to my team. They read the changes and discussed it amongst themselves. Lucian spoke afterwards. Looks like the amendments are ready to be proposed. But I have to say this too. The new electoral threshold will be really difficult for the party to accept. Our guys are not fond of that idea. That's true. It will be tough to get all their support. Some of our members may try to openly fight against this. I'm prepared to reconsider if it comes to that. Like I said, I want to play these things off of each other. We will all do our best to make it work, sir. Any other comments before we proceed? I don't think I have any problems with the changes. Me neither. Looks like we can proceed immediately. I will personally work on the wording of this proposal with my hand-picked legal experts. With Miss Morgna's reputation as the most experienced attorney, this proposal will be bulletproof. Chief Justice Orso will have a hard time convincing others to oppose it. In the meantime, you must introduce this proposal to our party. You will need to get them to back us if we want to pass the assembly. Sir, I advise you to first talk with the leaders of both conservative and reformist wings of the party. As far as I'm aware, Mr. Clavin supports the reforms already. Mrs. Tory will be the real problem. She became the real heavyweight after we left for the executive. Any advice in regards to dealing with them? As Mr. Vectorn said, Mr. Clavin is probably going to be easier to persuade. We need to unite the party under this, so his support is vital. Miss Gloria will be tougher to break. The problem is that she's capable of turning the moderates and the conservatives against us. As much as I don't want to say this, if she makes demands to change the proposal, you may need to give in. Thanks for the advice. Wish you good luck with the party, sir. I think we can end the meeting here. We all shook hands, and they left the room. All right. I think that went very well. Like I said, we may need to give in on the electoral threshold change. But again, like I said, I care more about the removal of the Member of Honor thing. So I want to play this off of this. Be like, okay, you know, we can make a compromise. I can remove one of these. And I'd probably select this one because it's the least popular. Obviously, again, I would reduce it to 3% if I could, but we do not have the political capital to get something that radical through, unfortunately. Reform Committee started preparations. Great. And what do we have here? Rain leading promised reforms. Preparations underway for the annual Benfey Festival. Unleashing energy and analysis of EPA's potential. Okay. Alright. Either we do the Meeting Energy Protection Act or we do dinner with the Business Council. Let's start with the meeting on the Energy Protection Act. As the morning sun streamed through the window of the presidential office, an imminent meeting loomed on my agenda. In a quarter of an hour, I was set to discuss the Energy Protection Act of 1932, Ministers Graf, Hull, and Vichy. The recent abrogation in the Grand National Assembly, coupled with the ongoing dialogues with Gassom, had only served to amplify the discourse surrounding the legislation. I was sipping my morning coffee and enjoying a quiet moment of solitude when David arrived, characteristically early. A very good morning to you, Mr. President. I trust I'm not imposing by arriving ahead of schedule. Not at all, David. On the contrary, we've got an extra few minutes to strategize before the meeting. I'm relieved to hear that, Anton. I depart earlier from my appointments nowadays, as the stairs of the Capitol have become more of a challenge than I would like to admit. It's nothing to be ashamed of, David. Would you like some coffee or tea? I've already had my tea today, as per my doctor's advice. She suggests chamomile in the morning and sage tea in the evening for optimal health. That sounds nice. I should make more tea. Listening to the doctor does bring me some comfort. It feels as though my throat has been refreshed thanks to her. His gaze drifted, locking onto something beyond the window. Although it is interesting that in this era, 1954, that his doctor's a woman. That's good. That's good. His gaze drifted, locking onto something beyond the window. A colossal zeppelin traversed the sky above the Maroon District. For a fleeting moment, it blotted out the sun before gently veering to the left, letting light flood the office once more. I still remember the first airships in Sordland. We purchased them from Kina after the war, during the birth of what's so-called the Second Republic. Our infrastructure lay in ruins, and those zeppelins offered a much-needed lifeline, a chance to traverse and rebuild. And then, thanks to our research council's diligent efforts, we started manufacturing our own in Gelzord. It's fascinating to think how much we depended on foreign help after the war. We've come a long way since then. We were in a desperate state then, but remember, it is often in our darkest hours that we find the strength to rise again. It is often in our darkest hour that we find the strength to rise again. Our reliance on others was temporary, a stepping stone towards self-sufficiency we achieved with the National Autarky Plan. Even though it has downsides, I still consider it a success. A pause filled the room. David's gaze landed on the portrait of Tarkin's soul, hanging in the presidential office. His eyes lingered on the stern face of the old leader. A sigh escaped his lips. Now when I think of the EPA, my mind is carried back to the formative years of post-Civil War Holzerd in the 1930s. The debates, the passion, the potential for transformation. It was a time of renewed optimism. It is our duty now to learn from the past and strive for a better future. What applied back then won't apply to now. I can see why the Energy Protection Act was so crucial at the time. We had to safeguard our energy sector from foreign interference, especially in the context of the post-Civil War economic situation. Yes, the EPA helped ensure that the sector remained under our control, limiting the extent of ownership of foreign powers such as Rumburg or Lesbia. Despite the controversies, it was crucial to our recovery and has helped us maintain our energy independence to this day. I did not agree with all the measures enacted by the technocratic government of that era, but some were undeniably effective. In the end, it took a collective effort to reassemble our nation's fragmented pieces. I'm sure you remember those dark days yourself. I know you were just a student at the Lackhaven Business School, far from Holzord, but the armed rebels did reach your area. It was a surreal time, studying business principles while chaos ensued just a few miles away. Stability and order are important to our nation, yet sometimes disorder is necessary for change. David turned towards the large framed portrait of his father, Artur Sanakovici, hanging on the wall, painted with rich, warm hues. He had captured the first president of Sordland in his prime. A spark of determination gleamed in his eyes, and his mouth was set in a gentle, firm smile, a reflection of his belief in a better future for our country. Sordland wouldn't be what it is today without your father. Yes, my father's leadership laid the foundation for the Sordland we know. His policies were aimed at building a secular and democratic state where every citizen's rights are protected. He believed in a Sordland that was modern and forward-thinking. Everything he did was aimed at fostering progress, even his controversial embrace of foreign ideologies. He looked back at the portrait with a mix of pride and sadness. In a way, Turkensold did carry on my father's legacy. Under his leadership, we transitioned from a military government to a civilian one, and experienced our first multi-party elections. But over time, he drifted away from the ideals of reform and progress that my father held so dear. His visionary zeal succumbed to more pragmatic, more conservative, and sometimes even regressive diktats of political survival. Perhaps history would have taken a different course if the Azam incident didn't happen. Indeed, the Azam incident is a reminder of how unforeseen events can rapidly change the course of a nation. The Azam incident was a bloody protest that occurred in 1933. It was largely regarded one of the foundational moments of the British movement. In 1933, the Salt Dam project, which was proposed as a long-term solution to Berja and Sordland's energy problem, began its construction. The construction site was home to an old British village called Azam, which was planned to be evacuated and razed to open the way for the dam. Every year, the remembrance of the day of Ashraf's death is widely attended by the British people who treat it as part of their identity, while others use it as a symbol of separatist sentiment. Gee, that's rough. That's really fucked. It turned us away from the path of reform, but we still worked hard to create the Sordland my father had envisioned. Alfonso, for all his flaws, did seek to set the nation back on the path of progress, with his focus on free market and economic liberalization. His EPA amendments, for example, were a severe departure from Seoul's national autarky plan, but many praised the way it opened doors for unprecedented foreign investment in our energy economy. Do you think the EPA still holds relevance today, or should we consider a complete overhaul? The EPA has its roots in a different era. While some of its principles may still hold, we must not shy away from revising it in light of our current needs and challenges. Just as the conversation hit a pause, the door swung open, and the other ministers arrived. Simon Hull entered first, with a confident stride. "Good morning, Mr. President. David, I trust the discussion is progressing well." Lilith followed closely behind. She walked in with an air of calm and authority, her gaze sweeping across the room. "Gentlemen, I hope I'm not interrupting anything crucial. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you all here. We have some important discussions on the agenda today, particularly concerning the Energy Protection Act." "Thank you, David. I appreciate the urgency. Let's get right to the heart of the matter. Today, we have the opportunity to shape the economic strategy of Sordland for decades to come. The EPA has long stood as a key contention and debate point of the National Autarky Plan. This matter is a discussion of how Sordland sees itself and how we position ourselves in the world. Our nation has taken very different economic approaches in the last 4 decades. Mr. President has decided to lean on promoting a market economy, which should give us a clear indicator. Should we decide to increase the EPA threshold to 49% or eliminate it entirely, it could spark an influence of foreign investment. Given our current economic predicament, this would be a significant boost. Promoting a market economy does not inherently translate to prosperity for all. It can lead to concentration of wealth, while the rich getting richer, while the middle and working classes struggle. She is correct in this. We need to ensure that the benefits of economic growth are shared equitably across all layers of society. I agree with that too. I couldn't agree more, Lilies. The welfare of our citizens should be our primary concern. I'm glad we see eye to eye on this matter, Mr. President. Our welfare as a whole depends on that of the least fortunate among us. Mr. President, Lilith, shall we return to the subject of the EPA? Our current version of the Energy Protection Act dates back to 1949. President Alfonso's amendment raised the cap on foreign investment in storage energy companies up to 20%. In my view, it was a necessary step to attract foreign investment and stimulate our economy. We must remember that Sordland was facing an economic crisis during his tenure, and these changes provided a lifeline for our energy industries. Did the increased foreign ownership actually lead to substantial economic growth? While the increase in foreign ownership alone didn't lead to a drastic upturn in economic growth, it did have a positive effect. It facilitated foreign investment and provided our industries with much needed capital. The effects of such policy changes often take time to fully manifest, but they lay the groundwork for future economic development. The Assembly has spoken on this matter, and as it stands, the Energy Protection Act of 1932 will not be repealed. It's clear that our colleagues have recognized the potential risks of exposing our energy sector to foreign ownership. While this doesn't end the debate, it does underline the importance of respecting our Assembly's decision. Yeah, I agree. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I do agree. I don't think, while I am very, very much supportive of it bringing in more investments and maybe reducing the cap a little bit. I mean, I don't like the 49-51 split. I think it's too close. I think a 40-60 in our, the government's hand would be better. But, I do think that maintaining a cap on how much foreign investment can come into our energy sector is important. We need to maintain security and control over our own natural resources. But we can't deny the effects of investment from foreign powers completely. Like, investment does lead to growth. If we have more investments, we have more money to work with, we can grow our energy industry substantially. So, I'm going to say this. I don't only respect the Assembly's decision, I wholeheartedly support it. I do not want to repeal the EPA. I respect the decision of the Assembly, Lilith. However, we mustn't allow this setback to deter us from exploring more options. The global landscape is ever evolving, and we must adapt accordingly. It's also important to remember that the Assembly's decision is not the final word. There is room for further legislative efforts and executive initiatives. When it comes to the Energy Protection Act, I believe we should increase our threshold for foreign investment. In fact, my preference would be to remove the threshold entirely. This would undoubtedly strengthen energy institutions such as Gazprom and Source Petroleum. We've seen Rija's interest in the former, and I know Lesbia has had its eye on the latter for some time. That's precisely what I'm worried about. We have to remember that we're dealing with national security as well as economics. Reverting to the sole era 10% limit or keeping the law as it is would be a safer approach. We cannot risk our energy infrastructure falling into foreign hands, especially not to Rumberg. I see merit in both your arguments. Yes, we need to protect our national security, but we also need to consider the economic implications. Perhaps a mixed approach would work best. What if we increase the limit to 49%, thereby attracting foreign investments while maintaining source control over critical energy sectors? Yeah, I like that idea. It gives us majority control and the final word on all of our energy. However, it opens up our economy more to investments and allowing us to grow the energy industry and actually expand and actually produce more. So, let's take a look at this. Considering potential foreign buyers such as Kinal, Rija, Anrika, Rumberg, and Lesbia, what are the worst case scenarios that gain control over our hydroelectric, gas, and oil sectors? Okay. How would the Energy Protection Act changes to impact corporations like Gazprom, which could sell to any entity under the revised laws? Interesting. Mention national security risks. How would changes the Energy Protection Act affect energy prices within Sordland? That's a good question too. I want to ask this one. How would the Energy Protection Act changes impact corporations like Gazprom, which could sell to any entity under the revised laws? I believe you already know the answer to this, Mr. President. Gazprom could fall under foreign control, just like any other energy corporation. On the other hand, foreign investment would result in increased resources flowing to Gazprom and its ilk. And those resources could be channeled into further development of our energy sector. Yes, Gazprom could potentially sell to anyone, but wouldn't that be a show of our strength and attractiveness of our energy sector on the global stage? Considering potential foreign buyers such as Kinal, Rija, and how would changes to the Energy Protection Act affect prices within Sordland? With increased foreign investment, we could potentially see a decrease in energy prices. That could be good if citizens are able to get more access to electricity, and ourselves, like if we're going to go in an industrial level, if we have reduced energy prices, we could potentially produce significantly more and provide significantly more energy for a wider swath of the population, which is very, very enticing. But we should also consider the potential impact on job security and national control over our energy sector. Change to the Energy Protection Act could lead to increased energy prices, as foreign entities could manipulate the market. With increased competition and foreign investment, we could also see a decrease in energy prices. The more players in the market, the more competitive the prices will be. These seem like strong arguments for the 49-51 split. I am worried about foreign manipulation of the market. For-profit corporations do that, but if we have majority control over it, then we can clamp down if we need to. If other countries are trying, or if other corporations and countries are trying to manipulate it, if we have 51% of our energy in our control, then we can clamp down on that. I think that could potentially be the best case scenario. Considering potential foreign buyers such as Kinal, Rija, Anrika, Rumburg, and Lesbia, what are the worst case scenarios if they gain control over our hydroelectric, gas, and oil sectors? Think about it, Mr. President. If any one of those countries, but especially Rumburg, gains control of our energy sector, they could cut off the power at any moment. We would also be forced to comply with any decision they made regarding prices or environmental measures. She's right. That's very concerning. There's no denying the potential risks of foreign buyers gaining control over critical sectors. If we increase the foreign ownership threshold of 49%, we can attract more investments while mitigating those risks. While we may see entities from Kinal, Rija, Anrika, Rumburg, or Lesbia as potential threats, it's also crucial to see them as potential partners. The scenario Lily's mentioned are possible, of course, but I think the economic growth and international relations that could be fostered. If we aim to deal more closely with Lesbia, for example, I very much doubt they'll settle for a mere 49% energy investment. Frankly, fuck them. I don't care. Like if they have a problem with 49% of the if they have a problem with only 49%, then they probably aren't trustworthy enough to deal with. Simply. Lilith, you mentioned national security risks. Could you elaborate further on that? The national security risks are significant. Foreign entities could use their stake in our energy sector as leverage in diplomatic or economic negotiations. National security risks are always a concern when discussing foreign ownership. That's why it's crucial to have thorough vetting and monitoring processes in place. Don't forget about the importance of economic security. In a globalized world, economic strength can be just as critical as military might. He is correct about that. That is true. But yes, it's essential to maintain strict oversight and regulations to ensure national interests aren't compromised. We can proceed. It's time to settle this subject. Given the turbulent economic landscape, maintaining the status quo of the Energy Protection Act could offer us stability. We are already open to foreign investment to at a 20% threshold. Changing this percentage may introduce unexpected challenges and could complicate our foreign relations. I firmly believe in the sovereignty and strength of our nation. Returning to the threshold to 10%, as it was during the Seoul era, could protect us from undue foreign influence and ensure that our energy sector remains in Swedish hands. While I maintain that increasing foreign investment could significantly stimulate our economy. An increase of 49% could be a balanced compromise, signaling to the world that Sordland is open for business while retaining majority control over our assets. But some potential partners, particularly ATO countries, might regard even that as insufficient. We must consider the far-reaching implications of our actions, especially in light of our recent dealings with Gazprom. Mr. President, your decision to position Sordland as sole Gazprom investor certainly gives us more control over the gas sector, but it has increased our financial burden significantly. We must review our fiscal policies. Future for gas industry lies in our hands, not anyone else's. Our full investment in Gazprom demonstrates this. Our administration needs to protect the jobs of Gazprom workers, and this investment ensures this. I have a little interest beyond this. That's not true. I very much am interested, as I've said before. This investment signifies our commitment to Sordland's energy independence, put our resources to work for the Swedish people. The future of our gas industry lies in our hands, not anyone else's. Our full investment in Gazprom demonstrates this. I agree with that. Sam meticulously adjusts his glasses. Considering we're investing heavily in Gazprom, our decision about the EPA will greatly impact the attractiveness of the remaining shares to foreign investors. A reduction in the EPA could pave the way for potential profits from shares, whereas total removal may invite an unpredictable rush for the remaining 45%. Could pave way for potential. Yeah, that's true. Reducing it could... Yeah, no, I don't... Honestly, if anyone has a problem with the fact that we're still protecting our energy sector, honestly, I don't want them to deal with us. That doesn't inspire confidence. But if people actually want to put an investment to gain a return, you know, as an investment should be, they shouldn't really have a problem with 49%. Our investment in Gazprom reinforces Sordland's sovereignty. However, altering the EPA may dilute that sovereignty. I caution against drastic changes that may leave us vulnerable to foreign influence. We must maintain control of our energy sector at all costs. Percent investment could potentially be overshadowed by foreign investors. However, it could also maximize the returns if foreign investment floods in. By increasing, I think I'm going to go with this option. By increasing the foreign ownership threshold to 49%, we're opening up more opportunities for foreign investment. This could improve the value of our own 30% stake in Gazprom. Oh, we have a 30% stake. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, 49%. Raising the threshold to 49% could increase Gazprom's value and by extension the value of our 30% stake, but we don't want to lose control over the company. At a 49% threshold could increase the value of our stake without risking loss of control. Increasing the EPA to 49% opens up a new avenue of trade, but we will have to ensure our national interests are not compromised. Oh, a lot of options here. Okay, hang on. We have to consider the long-term impact of our decisions. Foreign investment might bring immediate financial gain, but we risk losing control of our energy sector. That's true. I don't agree with this. The EPA has been a safeguard for our nation's interests, but we must all be open to change. We need to carefully weigh the benefits and drawbacks. That's also true. Choices aren't just about the numbers. I agree with this too. Okay. I like this option. Our priority should be balancing the need for economic growth while maintaining national sovereignty. Perhaps a phased approach to increasing foreign ownership could be the answer. I would say that we've covered the implications of your EPA decision fairly thoroughly, Mr. President. Our actions should be guided by the best interests of our nation. Mr. President, it's time for us to make a decision. What will we do with the EPA? Yeah, I agree with David. I agree with David completely. I think the best option for us here is to reduce the threshold to 49%. That way, we can increase our foreign investment. We can increase the value and growth potential of our energy sector while maintaining that economic security, that national security over our control of our own energy industry. By keeping up 51%, we have the last say over any decision that happens with the energy companies, while also inviting in more investment to increase the growth and prosperity of both our country by increasing our energy output and the companies themselves, especially if we fully own some of them, like Source Petroleum or Morgna Mining Core. So, for that reason, I'm okay with this second option. I don't think reducing it is necessary anymore. I think keeping it as it is just, nothing happens if you don't do anything. And I think removing it completely is a terrible idea because I think it'll cause a lot of uncertainty, it'll cause a lot of instability. And frankly, if one country is able to invest too much and gains control over that sector, that could put us at serious risk. So for that reason, we'll increase the foreign ownership threshold to 49%. This will increase foreign investment. A balanced approach will serve us well. This could attract significant foreign investment. It's a substantial increase. I fear we are opening ourselves too much. The door of the room opened. Livia Suno carried a tray laden with an assortment of beverages. She was a little clumsy as she maneuvered around the room, refilling cups and glasses with tea, coffee, and water. Excuse me, gentlemen and madame. I brought refreshments. Appreciate it, Livia. Tea would be perfect now. Very well, Mr. President. Here's your tea. As she finishes serving the beverages, Livy retreats towards the door. She glances around the room one last time before quietly backing out. The meeting resumed, our conversation growing slightly louder over the clink of cups and glasses. While we are here, I will inform you all I've been lending my expertise to Minister Benewall in relation to the Workers' Rights Bill. I believe it's crucial to ensure fair treatments for our workforce, and is nearing presentation. Your collaboration with Mr. Benewall is commendable. I hope it'll bring a positive change for our workforce. Thank you, Mr. President. The bill aims to prioritize workers' well-being. It's a step towards a more humane economic system. I share your sentiments, Mr. President. However, we must be careful to avoid encouraging anti-business tendencies. I concur, Mr. President. Ensuring the rights of our workers is paramount, although we must be cautious of any hidden agendas. Anyway, I have been working on our upcoming term budget meeting and a proposal for business taxation changes. Specifically, we're considering a range of 10% tax changes for small to medium enterprises and large corporations. This could be a significant move for our economic landscape. Such taxation approach could indeed invigorate our economy, but we must ensure it doesn't burden our SMEs unduly. I appreciate your insight, Mr. President. Ensuring the survival and growth of our small and medium enterprises is at the forefront of our considerations. Tax changes could indeed have a significant impact on our economy. We must consider their implications carefully. Large private corporations have enjoyed significant benefits and loopholes for far too long. They should pay their fair share. I do agree with that. As the ministers rose from their seats, the late morning light spilled into the room through the ornate windows. It seemed to signal the conclusion of the meeting. Our unity is our strength. Let's continue to work together for the good of Sordland. Thank you for the discussion. I'll continue working on priorities. Goodbye, everyone. See you at the term budget meeting. Until next time, dear colleagues, take care and see you soon. All right, balanced energy prices. Very nice to see. Reflect the stability in both supply and demand within the sector. Great. Energy protection, 49%. EPA increase, a risky endeavor, an opportunity for growth. Increase to 49 to a pathway to economic prosperity. What do they think? Tractors made protest. The economic data suggests that a higher foreign ownership limit can drive economic growth. Guess they're on our side for once. Manger's Grooney tour. Minister of Rural Development Gus Manger is touring the Grooney region in Bourne as part of his research for a new rural development plan. Tour includes several visits to meeting with local offices and communities. The outcome of this tour will contribute to the vision of the economic development plan. Farmers seeking support. The farmers point out that lack of access to modern farming equipment and insufficient infrastructure are major hurdles. They believe that targeted support and investment could rejuvenate the agricultural sector and contribute to the region's economy. So they're interested in modern farming equipment. That's very interesting. I'll very much keep that in mind. Agricultural growth potential. Untapped coal reserves. If we're leaning into the energy market, then this could be a good thing to take advantage of. Now, Dam Mining Corporation discovered new untapped coal reserves in Morbell. The corporation just suggests that investment in Lorne could significantly improve output, opening opportunities for economic growth in the region. The corporation is in the process of assessing the feasibility of potential of these reserves. Good to know. The discovery has reignited interest in the Black Battalion's history, and authorities are urging anyone with information related to the case to come forward. The remains of former Black Battalion members have been discovered near the site of the Zam incident. Yikes. That's a dark event. Okay. Dinner with the business council members. We were in Lecavan to work with the business council to assess weaknesses in the economy. Simon organized a dinner with the affluent economic figureheads of Sordland. When we arrived, the streets were bustling with activity, even though the atmosphere in the country was tense. Lecavaners didn't seem very worried. Together with Walter Tusk, Edith Agnock, Mikael Evan, and Simon Hall, we entered the renowned Asteria restaurant by the coast. A short blonde man whose embroidered pocket read manager greeted us and waved his arms in excitement as he told us how pleased he was to have us in the establishment. Beaming with pride, he led us to a private room and got us seated at the large table, covered for the occasion with a maroon tablecloth. How nice. We were quickly served by a group of servers. Walter spoke as they started taking our orders. I recommend the Lackhaven salmon of this place, President. I know that you're from Lackhaven, but I bet you haven't tasted anything like this before. Don't get me wrong, Mr. Tusk, but of course I've tasted this greatness many times here already. Excuse me, President. I should have known that a man of your caliber would be a regular at Hysteria. Snobs. Order Lackhaven salmon. Order Lackhaven salmon for the main course. The servers took their notes and asked about a second dish. Sure, order a salad. Servers placed glasses in front of each of us and served bread and water. After they were done taking orders, they quickly left us alone in the private room. Mr. President, I didn't have the possibility to thank you for coming today. Your presence means a great deal. Indeed, sir. It's an honor to dine with you. It's great to be here with members of the Business Council. We should thank Simon for organizing this meeting. No need for that. I hope everyone enjoys the evening. Simon gestured at the expensive-looking red wine bottle that one of the servers had just brought to the table. Mr. President? That looks amazing. Well, it tastes even better. Best of Lesbia, the Chateau de Franco, 1934. Simon poured some wine in my glass and waited for me to taste it before filling it up. I took a sip. The taste of the wine was immediately stimulating and delightful to my palate. It immediately reminded me of our visits to my father's vineyard when I was a little kid. The wine's sweet and bitter flavors exploded in my mouth. The aroma of gooseberries and lilacs tumbled across my tongue, and my mouth tinkled with them long after I'd swallowed. How is it? Is the taste you're liking? One detail I want to throw out here, if you start the game being from either the middle class or the lower class, it just says it tastes like any other wine. So the fact that they added this detail, fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I absolutely adore the writers of this game for, even implementing such small detail like that. It really is a testament to how much they've thought about this and how much they care. It tastes like heaven. Reminds me of my father's vineyard. I've heard he was a big wine connoisseur. May you rest in peace. Thank you. Simon filled up my glass. After filling everybody's glasses, Simon stood up and raised his glass. I'd like to raise a toast to all of you here today. We're meeting here tonight in difficult times, but I believe that with hard work, cooperation, and trust, we'll get through this period as well. I'd like to thank Mr. Rain for his decisiveness when it comes to economic policies. I'm sure we will stop this recession. I also thank Mr. Tusk for being with us today. His presence is an honor. And of course, my colleagues from the Business Council, Mrs. Agnock, Mr. Avon. Without you, none of these would have been possible. Let's drink to future cooperation and growth for a prosperous Sordland. Everyone raised their glasses and toasted each other. After a few more minutes, the servers arrived with our meals. When I tasted the food, I went back to my past. It reminded me of my childhood in this city. Even though I couldn't recall much about my father, I remember that he also loved the food of Hysteria. So, how did you find the food of the best fine dining restaurant in Lackhaven, Mr. President? This can't get old. It's an experience. The chef must be tipped. Definitely it doesn't. Definitely it doesn't, but I will take care of the tip. Don't you worry. Always generous when it comes to small things. Tipping is no small thing. I actually don't like giving tips. People have salaries for a reason. But anyway. Do I get into the tipping conversation? Yeah, sure, briefly. Look, I think if you have the means to tip, obviously if you don't, that's not your fault. But if you have the means to tip, you should tip. However, corporations absolutely use tipping as a way to underpay their workers, and frankly, that's unacceptable. For that reason, I think that in our current system, you should tip if you are able to. However, tipping should be just flatly banned, and corporations should be forced to pay their bartenders and their servers a proper wage. It should not be left up to the consumer. You're the business owner. You accept the responsibility. You accept paying your workers more. Period. End of discussion. Pay your fucking workers. Jesus. How are things going in the Maroon Palace? The pressure must have increased after you attended that funeral. I have to say, the future is looking good. Project confidence. That's great to hear. As we conversed with Mikhail, I heard Walter raise his voice in apparent argument with Edith and Simon. We both stopped to listen. Arcasia knows the right way of doing business. Their approach to the world is real and raw. I'd prefer that cutthroat approach in comparison to the niceties. Well, I mean, it's a nice country to visit too. I have traveled there often on business trips. Their attitudes on all countries are nice to visit if you have the cash. I agree. I'll just let them talk. I don't have to. Mikhail joined in. It certainly depends on what you were looking for. Cultural tourism doesn't require a fancy hotel. Last time I went somewhere for that sort of thing was at university, and even then we had our wild times thanks to Conrad's connected entourage. Also, Walter is taking us down the rabbit hole again. By the way, I saw that the construction of the railway has already started. I have my concerns about the company, but I hope they do a good job. The project will surely boost our economy if done correctly. The mood is already becoming positive. I have to congratulate Mr. Rain for starting such a massive project. Thank you for your support, Mr. Avon. Of course. Mr. Hull also deserves credit, of course, our great economy minister. Is there a joke coming? Why? I thought you said you were great at economy. He laughed. I've heard that you've bought a new villa, Simon. I don't comment on rumors, but I'll make an exception since we're among friends. It's true. Where's the property? I don't want to call him out. It is a small seaside villa on the outskirts of Conrad. It's just a modest house with a swimming pool and a small golf course in the property. Great city to buy real estate in. Conrad is seeing a surge of investment. I say through gritted teeth. Underhall Construction made a fortune constructing houses there. Yeah, on the back of underpaid labor. Where there is demand, there is supply. The market rules supreme, as always. Edith, who was sitting to my left, gently put her hand over my arm for a few seconds. Come on, let's not talk about finance or politics now. We came to relax. She turned to Walter and Simon. Isn't that right, gentlemen? They nodded at her and took a sip from their drinks. She slightly leaned towards me. So, Mr. Rain, why don't you tell us of what's behind that strong character of yours? I've heard that your father was a very wealthy man. Would you say that I contributed a lot to your success? I mean, obviously money opens all the doors, but since in this particular environment, I'm going to just say it didn't contribute much. My success has nothing to do with that. That's a lie. I'm lying here, but of course not. You've worked hard for it. I have worked hard, but the money helps. The money always helps. Keep that in mind. Even if you work very, very hard, you might still lose because you don't have the opportunity that money can buy you. It's not always about the money. Usually, it's not always about hard work. Hard work is exceptionally important, and you should work the best and hardest that you can, regardless of your circumstances, but money opens a lot of doors. We can't just delude ourselves into believing that, if you're a billionaire, that, everything is about hard work. It's not. You have money, you open up opportunities with that money. If you don't have the money, it's harder to get those opportunities in the first place, even for something as simple as education in countries that don't finance it for free, which they should. Of course not. You've worked hard for it. After all, money can't buy diligence. I never met your family, Mr. President. How are they doing, if you don't mind me asking? They're doing great. We have no problems. That's great to hear. Your son must be very proud of you. Family is everything. My advice would be to make sure that Frank has a solid relationship with you. He is your future, after all. I'm trying to be a good father. I'm trying my best to be a good father to him. He seems to be somewhat introverted. Wish that was my son's biggest problem. Darren seemed to be doing fine. I saw that his yacht party... Jesus. I saw that his yacht party in Benfey made local news. Well, the rascal didn't even ask for my permission to use the yacht and just took it. He basically stole it. Good news is that I finally convinced him to go to university. He'll study economics at Lackhaven Business School. That's a good choice. Having a degree in Sordland separates you from the rabble, and we especially need more people who understand economics. Talking of which, it's great that we have another leader who actually studied economics and understands it, like Mr. Alfonso. Alfonso was an inspiration for all reformists. He was. He truly wanted to transform this country to a modern nation. His term was very difficult, though. He got destroyed. A correction, it wasn't his policies that destroyed him, it was the old guard. What do you mean? He threatened their economic power base over the country through a vast privatization plan. They removed him and backed you after. Walter, stop the conspiracy theories. I think we've had enough drinks. Everyone went quiet. After a long silence followed by some chit-chat, Walter ordered a bottle of whiskey. That's one good-looking bottle. The waiters brought out the finest Arcasian whiskeys. It was time for a toast. Toast. I stood up to give the toast. I mean, I'd love to say this in front of the most snobbish fuckers in town, but... to a constructive and beneficial future. May our differences be set aside for a good future. They say hope dies last. To the future. Raised. I think it's time we call it a night. He has stood up. Most of us were a little tipsy at this point. I wanted to thank you, Mr. President, for joining us, and you, Simon, for putting all this together. Thank you, Edith, for joining a bunch of ugly rich men. Thank you all for being here. It was great. Thank you. Thanks for being here. After bidding our farewells, we slowly walked out of the restaurant. The moon was shining bright, and as everyone except Walter left in their luxury cars. President, a moment alone, please. It's good to talk. Even if it's just as simple as knowing what he wants, it's good to talk. I'll follow him. Usually the Lotharburg spokesman doesn't directly comment on the administration, but I'd like to say a few things since this was a special evening. I'm all ears. Finally, a president that listens to the people. The people. It won't be easy to pass the new constitution through the Assembly and Supreme Court. We could help you get it through if you, in return, help us with a few economic requests. Walter lit his cigar and took a few drags before continuing. The consensus is that we see eye to eye in the economic direction you have taken by promoting a market economy. I'm glad that the group is supportive. It was calculated. I didn't want to say that, but okay. I'm glad the group is supportive of the decision. It was calculated. There are many who put their trust in you. Walter smiled. He looked me in the eye. You rejected our previous discreet offer to pick Underhall Construction for the execution of the first mega infrastructure project. The action led to disappointment among the group. We are aware of the upcoming tax meeting, and it would be a step in the right direction if private corporations would get a tax cut. To boost the economy with job creation, of course. And the positive side effect would be our support to the administration throughout the entire term. Yeah, no. I'm planning to increase the taxes. We need more money, and frankly, they have far too much influence already. So I'm just going to say no. I'll make tax decisions objectively. I can't promise you anything. Oh, let's not be hasty. The recession will end if Lotharburg is on your side, President. Why can't we all just be friends? I'm just going to say maybe we can, because maybe is super ambiguous by design. Maybe we can. I'll see what I can do. Excellent. Glad to hear this. The group wants a private corporation tax and privatization in healthcare and education. I didn't say that so you could demand more of me, you slimy fuck. Oh, Jesus Christ. That is too much of an axe. On third thought, I have to reject. That's a shame. I did offer you a peace branch. There was an awkward silence. Either way. President, we are here and always ready to work with you if you change your mind. Don't forget that. I will think about it, but not now. Walter left and Serge came to pick me up. Enter the car. I entered the car and we drove to our residence in Lac Haven. Serge took the seaside route. Yeah, I always choose the more diplomatic option rather than trying to, make clear statements, especially to people who I do not trust at all. School poisoning connected to Bush woman. Yikes. Oh, that's awful. Car bomb attack in Arvory. Time bomb. No perpetrators. Interesting. That's odd. Bill on the rights of workers being drafted. Good. President meets with business council. Yeah. Morbel mine disaster, 112 dead. Shit. Disaster hit Morbel last night when one of the main support shafts in the Morbel coal mine collapsed, trapping many coal miners inside. That's awful. The rescue operations are continuing without any sleep. Investigators have told us that this might have happened due to the neglect of Nadam mining group. Families of miners and people of Morbel showed up in protest at the site of the disaster. Coincidentally, the workers' rights bill that was being drafted in the assembly for the past few months comes too late. The eyes of Sordland are now turned to President Rain to see his decision on the bill. Yeah, that's unacceptable. That's disgusting. Oh, the budget meeting. Okay, this is going to be one of the critical moments. All right, let's make this defining decision. If this is the part that I think it is, this should be very interesting. Budget allocation of the government of Sordland. The preparation for the government budget were finished. Most of the cabinet gathered in the White Room for the important occasion. Wow, that's a lot of people. Nearly half a year had passed since my inauguration. The cabinet looked overworked. I would like to use this opportunity for a statement. Of course, sir. Years ago, all of us gathered to change the course of history. Now I'm proud of what we have achieved and what is to come. The ministers appeared energized by my statement. Good. Much appreciated, sir. Sadly, Peter Vector and Gus Manger and David Vichy will not be attending this meeting. They are working on the upcoming trade agreements with Valen and Ignolia. May the Lord be with them. Kira gave a barely disguised eye roll. Before we begin, is nobody going to mention the ban on the young swords? However much the political aims might differ from our administration, surely you must agree that the freedom of expression must be protected at all costs. Not for fascists. Sorry. The idea of freedom of speech is fascists love freedom of speech until they're in power and revoke it for everybody but them. I'm not interested in the young swords' freedom of speech. If their freedom is to put their boot on the neck of people who don't share the same skin color or culture as them, then frankly, I reject it as free speech at all. Fuck them. Nia, Miss Morgna, is right. Nia flashed her an appreciative smile. I myself strongly disagree with the young sword's politics, but even I believe that. She broke off as she noticed that Lucian, Simon, and Yosef were looking at her, and Nia in stony silence. Ladies, let's leave the extraneous chit-chat for afternoon tea. Lucian, that was rude. Kira shot a pleading look at Lilias, who merely pursed her lips disapprovingly. If you have problems with the ban, call a separate meeting with me. Simon started loudly shuffling some documents around. All eyes turned to the Minister of Economy. Thanks to Simon's expertise, I am sure we will achieve a lot of great things today. Thank you for the compliment. Today is a big day. We must prioritize our spending wisely in order to achieve the goals we set as a government. While maintaining enough political support, if I may add, promises were made during the election. There are three options regarding the budgeting of the four main branches of the government. It's either we increase, maintain, or decrease the funding. Increasing will result in an improvement of the branch, which will unlock new policy options. Maintaining will keep the funding, resulting in no visible change. Decreasing costs is a loss of efficiency in that branch. The problem is the amount of money spent, it's how efficiently we spend it. It's true that many of our policies could be far better implemented. Our welfare systems are full of issues that need to be addressed. For instance, we have to be careful as to what we fund so we have resources remaining for another investment project. We have to keep true to the election promises. Our people voted for us because of the promises we made. I really thought we'd have more money at this point. I have been spending a fair bit, but I thought I'd have more by this point. So, we'll see. As much as we realistically can, if we fail at improving our economy, the promises don't mean much in the big picture. Before we begin our discussion, there's one more thing I'd like to voice my opinion on. As we manage the government's budget, we can go into debt to invest in different branches. However, under these circumstances, it would worsen the economic crisis if we push it too far. It's difficult for us to raise debt with the current unhealthy economy, but we can increase the amount of debt we can take as the economy improves. We should spend as much as possible to achieve growth. A stimulating strategy could have a positive political effect with increased support. Given the current state of the country, improving the economic situation is a political priority right now, more so than ever, if we want to win the 58 election. The budget will also be applicable to our entire term. It is very critical that we plan correctly. Let's begin then. Which branch should we discuss first? What about education? That was our promise. Our education system is lacking, not only in funding, but also in modern curricular principles. Our outdated curriculum is wasting our youth. That is the reason why I advocate two things: an increase of the budget to improve access to education in rural areas, and a new education reform. To be honest, Sordland is lacking compared to Arcadia and United Contana when it comes to education levels. The backbone of any country is its people, and we need to protect our future. We need to ensure the new generation is as well educated as their counterparts in more modern countries. Nonsense. Sordland is still here because of this very system that you insult. How can you insult a system that teaches our sons and daughters the principles of national identity and pride? Because that's the most important thing we should focus on. We won't be compared to other countries. Sordland is Sordland. I agree with Lilius. Sordland is Sordland. I must also remind you that we promised that we were going to focus on education during our campaign. I agree with Kira. It is high time we invest in education and enact reforms. Let's talk about healthcare. Our healthcare system is vast and provides free services to most of our citizens. However, the quality of our health service is far worse in low-income and rural areas. Therefore, I think that we should receive more funding to address this disparity. I agree. I have recently begun an investigation into healthcare in Narba, and the numbers are not good. If we don't increase spending on healthcare services, we at least need to maintain it. Otherwise, we are putting lives at risk. We have just started a new analysis on what would happen if a pandemic struck Sordland. According to the results, if our healthcare facilities remain in their current state, the death toll would be unimaginable. I'm not even talking about the damage to the economy. It's a matter of life and death, Mr. President, and it should be treated as such. That is indeed worrying. We should try to fix whatever we can as the government. Let's discuss law enforcement. I would like to have an increase in the funding of law enforcement to increase the size of the police force and raise salaries. We have so many internal threats to tackle, and I'm already stretching my units far too thin with the limited resources allocated to me. Nia cleared her throat. Law enforcement is certainly a high priority. However, I feel tackling internal corruption is of far higher importance than increasing our police presence. I agree with that very, very much. Directing funds to my department would solve the problem at its root. If corruption is still rampant, all the police in the world won't help us. We need a specialized anti-corruption police unit, which we could create if the funds were directed to me. I agree with Ms. Morgna. We should not reward a structure that is responsible for an ever-increasing number of human rights violations. Additionally, corruption is the reason of our government inefficiencies. It needs to be tackled. The police are there to serve and protect the people of Sordland, Miss Walda, and that is exactly what we're doing. Sure. More funding will allow us to take care of our police forces. It is quite a simple choice, given the current status of the country. I agree with Nia. We need real solutions for real problems like corruptions. It's time to hear the opinions of the military. What was there to hear about? I already voiced my opinions. Rumberg is coming whether we like it or not. If not this year, next year. If not next year, the year after that. Mr. President, you and I have a shared responsibility to protect this nation from its enemies, and I intend to do so until my last breath. I will say this with certainty. If Rumberg doesn't make a move against Sordland in 2 or 3 years, my name is not Josef Lancia. Josef was beginning to lose control of the volume of his voice. Me too, man. There could be no argument against increasing the budget for our army when there is an enemy at our doorstep, waiting for us to make one wrong move. Anyone who thinks otherwise is a fool. Mr. Lancia. Right. Pardon my theatrics, sir, but this is a serious matter. The future of our country is up to you, Mr. President. Well, here's an argument. The armed forces does nothing but eat away financial resources destined for our people while stoking fears of an upcoming war. The issues with Rumberg can be solved diplomatically. What kind of a message are we sending to them and the whole world if we suddenly start ramping up our military budget? That's a good point. We have taken the more diplomatic and calm approach to dealing with Rumberg. It wouldn't be the best idea to start ramping up our military funding. That we are ready to defend our nation, Miss Walda. Exactly. There are other more important avenues that our money can be better spent on. I've made up my mind about the budget. We can proceed. Very good talking points for everyone. Well then, the time to make a decision on the budget has come. Consider it with care, Mr. President. Simon placed a stack of papers on my table. I turned the first page. Okay. Let's see what we've got. You can distribute the budget between the 4 branches below. Increasing the budget will result in an improvement of the branch, which may also unlock new policy options, while maintaining may result in no visible changes, and decreasing may result in the loss of efficiency. Sordland's healthcare system and healthcare quality have stagnated due to administrative inefficiencies, increased service demand, and an increasing divide in service and quality between urban and rural hospitals. The average life expectancy has dropped significantly, with issues such as maternity deaths and disease outbreaks. So, the thing to note about all of this, first of all, healthcare. Increasing the amount of healthcare will increase both the amount of support and the general stability of the country. If we're able to invest into healthcare and provide for our people as we absolutely need to, this is critical, by the way, we'll be able to decrease malaise, increase trust, increase people's ability to both be healthy and not have to spend exorbitant amounts on private healthcare. All of these things are really, really important. Reduce the mortality rates, reduce malnutrition rates, everything. So I think increasing the budget of healthcare is very important. However, we must know we can't just invest in everything and go straight into a crash. We need to be careful with this. That may still involve, I may still decide to increase the budget on everything. Probably not the military, but we need to take that into consideration. So let's start off with my gut opinion. I want to increase the budget. So we're at -2. That costs 3. Noted. Next. Law and order. The recently culminating political tension between the different youth groups and socioeconomic pressures between multiple classes of society is increasing the issues of law enforcement systems. If police need help keeping up with increased crime rates, simultaneously judges and courts deal with an enormous growing backlog of legal cases. I agree with Nia. I want to increase the law and order budget so that I can fund the anti-corruption police. If we deal with the problem from the inside, we deal with the root of the problem, that'll be better for everybody. We tackle corruption, we tackle the biggest issue, frankly, in any government. If you can get rid of corruption, all the money inefficiency disappears. It gets funneled where it needs to go and not into the hands of corrupt individuals. And also, if we're going to be opening up our economy to a market, then we need to have a dedicated police group to take care of the corruption that inevitably comes along with rich people getting richer and target that directly. So with that said, I want to increase the law and order budget. That's another 3. Education. The once praised public education system of the nation has suffered significant setbacks in the last decade. The lack of new schools, high student-to-teacher ratios, low teacher salaries, and even a lack of classroom equipment in certain parts of the country cause massive divergences in public education system. So again, the thing I said about healthcare also holds true for education, but frankly, even more so. If we're able to educate our youth, we're able to both if we teach children to think for themselves, they will be able to go in a more prosperous direction. They'll have a more prosperous future ahead of them. Education is the backbone of any society. It increases scientific discoveries, it increases literature, increases art. It allows people to pursue basically the greatest extent of their talents. We reduce inefficiency. Everything is improved by increasing the education budget. And with Kiara's reform policies, it will reduce the amount of nationalism within the education system. I think all of these are fantastic, and this has not only huge benefits to the population and allowing more kids to get educated, it also takes a burden away from the parents, and we have a huge potential for economic growth because of more skilled labor, more people who are educated, we have a greater ability to improve the economy significantly. So my hope, increase the education budget. We're at -8. Really not great. The Source Armed Forces were the nation's most funded branch until the Alfonso government reduced the defense budget significantly. With the increase of saber-rattling threats looming in the north by Rumberg and a growing presence of superpowers in the region, the critical deterrence of the SAF matters more than ever. I don't want to increase the military budget on account of we don't want to ramp up our military while we're trying to be diplomatic with Bloomberg. It sends a really bad message, and it gives them, frankly, a reason to provoke us. However, they'll be able to say like, oh, look, they're increasing the military. They want to go to war, and then, you know, start even more problems for us. However, with the amount of okay, this will make a -6. I want to maintain the military budget. However, I fully believe that my opinions on all these are more important to me. Increasing the health, even though we're spending a lot of money, which does make me very nervous, but increasing our healthcare system, absolutely critical. It boosts everything. It boosts health, happiness, the population security, keeps people out of critical condition. It's good for everybody, and it provides us more of a buffer in case of the pandemic incident, which could happen at any moment. So healthcare is important. The anti-corruption police is exceptionally important for the reasons I described earlier. Education, also critically important, not only for the baseline of citizen survival, but also for the prosperity of the entire country. The military, it's not providing us much. The military doesn't really increase the prosperity of the country, not necessarily, not directly, and frankly, I want to invest more money in other places. I might be taking a big risk here by investing so much in all the other branches, but reducing the amount we're spending on the military is probably important to make back some of that loss. I do fundamentally believe we can deal with Runeberg diplomatically, and I do fundamentally believe that decreasing the military budget will lead to a growth by investing that money into other places, including more infrastructure, and of course into all these other groups. The healthcare ministry, the anti-corruption police, the education ministry, and of course now here. So for that reason, I'm going to increase the budget of law, the law department, education department, healthcare department, and I'm going to decrease it for the Sword's Armed Forces. This is a huge risk, and I fully accept that, but I think this will lead to the best outcomes in the long term for the country. All right, final budget, -6. We are about to go very much in debt. Wait, yeah, decrease. Increase, decrease. All right, our fate is sealed. I had finished allocating the government budget to the satisfaction of some cabinet members and the dismay of others. They and I knew this would define a significant part of our term. We have a deficit on our hands. We will need to resort to debt to finance the future investments. This situation can have adverse effects if we don't strike a balance. Agreed. Well then, let's start with law enforcement. Nia and Lilius were both smiling. Thank you for this decision, Mr. President. I knew you'd see reason on this, considering our internal security threats are at an all-time high. I still disagree with Ms. Graff on how money ought to be spent, but the increase in funding is certainly a step in the right direction. Any statements on the matter, sir? I trust you to push the Ministry of the Interior and Justice forward. We will be able to achieve positive results in the coming years, I can assure you. We will tackle corruption in the backlog of cases head on. Let's hear the Minister of Education. Kara was eager to comment. The increase of funding is very welcome. We can finally go after some comprehensive improvements by building new schools and improving the education system. Surely a well-funded and larger Ministry of Education would benefit everyone. Our future depends on our children. Education is the first step in the fight against ignorance. I agree completely. Education is our future, and it will not be sidelined. Our focus on it is clear. Thank you. It is great to see a positive change in the attitude of the administration for the first time in a decade. The military is next. Kara clearly wasn't finished, but didn't interject. Yosef chimed in. This is a disgrace. Runeberg is at our doorstep, and the armed forces already have a laundry list of problems. This was a grave mistake that we will surely pay for in time. Lucian seemed as if he was about to say something, but looked down at his notepad when Yosef eyed him. Concessions had to be made with the military budget. The priorities have changed. Is there a higher priority than our national security? I doubt it. Joseph leaned back in his chair. Let's hear from Mr. Benowal. Thank you, sir. This health budget increase will help me to focus on improvements. Our people will now be safer than ever. I'm also planning to tackle issues like the lack of rural hospitals and the recently worrying numbers of maternal deaths. Welfare must remain a priority for our term. There is no other way around it. Healthcare is very important for us, and as we move forward, it will improve drastically. It feels invigorating to have the weight of the government behind my cause. That covers all branches. Each minister will approach you with their respective policy requests and expectations over the next year. Thank you for your time and participation in this significant moment. The meeting is concluded. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time and effort. The ministers bid their farewells, some excitedly, others dejectedly. The cabinet slowly dispersed out of the White Room. The budget for our term was concluded. Lucian Galad has reported that so far they have been able to get in total 87 signatures behind the proposal. Efforts are underway to increase the support and to reach out to necessary members. Let's see. Discontent military personnel. That's not great. I'm very sorry. Consistent economy. Excellent. Increased healthcare funding. Relieved welfare system. Great. 1954 Sorge budget. This increase will help everyone in Sordland. Good. Cuts to the military will help the economy. Thanks, Marcel. Okay. This was a great turn. I'm very, very happy with how all of this went. I think the discussions with Gassom were a fantastic success. I think the Energy Protection Act being changed to 49% will significantly boost our economy. Let's hope that pays out. It really needs to pay out with how much debt we have currently, but I'm feeling very confident about that, and I think our relationship with Gassom was a good move, and followed up by the 49% increase. I think that was also very good. The increase to the healthcare and law enforcement and education budget, I think, was also a very, very good move. I'm very nervous because of the how much debt we're in, but I think long term that these things will pay off. We've made great progress this episode. I'm very, very excited for the future of this series. I think it's been going. I think this playthrough has been going really, really well, and I guess we'll see what the future has to hold for us. But other than that, I'm having a wonderful time. This game is wonderful. I love doing this. I sincerely appreciate all the support I've been getting on these streams, all the views, all the comments, everything. I appreciate it so much. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I really hope you all enjoyed the stream. Until next time when I play Suzerain again, I'm very, very much looking forward to playing more of this. Thank you all so much again for watching. Take care, and have a wonderful rest of your night. Bye.